Okay, good afternoon. Can I have your attention, please? We're ready to begin. First thing, check your cell phones, if you will. Put them on silent or whichever. And we'll with it.
Commissioner Maker.
Turn it down. Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman, not here yet. Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Tercivia.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, normally we will have public comments at this point, but I'd like to hold that and just move it down so we can ask Dorothy Jacks to join us at the podium. Dorothy is the county property appraiser, and she's going to take us through the process. And welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Just press that button and you're good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you
Great.
so
Thank
much,
you for
Mayor,
coming.
Vice Mayor. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I always enjoy coming down to Highland Beach, and I have a few very short slide presentation to share with you today, and then I'm happy, obviously, to answer any questions after that. I do want to tell you that we are just at the beginning of our summer tax roll process, where we will be mailing the notices of proposed property tax in about, 3 weeks. We mail them on August 19th. I know you all set a millage rate recently, which was submitted to us for inclusion on that notice, along with your public budget hearings. It'll be listed on it so that you can listen to comment from your residents about the tax rates this year. Of course, our side of that notice, besides just the process of preparing it and making sure, thank you, all of our 39 cities, our 6 special districts, and our 128 non-ad valorem districts in Palm Beach County, trying to bring all that together onto a single sheet of paper with that we mail to individually to 650,000 residents is a process, but we are just finishing it up today. Actually, we're just, all the millage rates are now in. The calculations begin. We have a printing company, not to get into too much detail, that actually prints them and mails them. And so we feel pretty good about where we are in our process for this year. So it has been a very busy year. As you probably are aware, our office must value property as of January 1st of each year. So when we looked at the values for 2022, they were based on the market in 2021. And it isn't left to anyone's imagination how busy that market was. We continue to see that trend extending into the beginning of 22. We have seen now, we have 6 months worth of data. There certainly has been a slowing in the number of transactions. The prices are not necessarily declining yet. We think that may come with the change in the interest rates and so forth. But we're quite honestly, for our work, happy to see the market slow down just a little bit. When it becomes overinflated, as it did during last year, our work gets more and more difficult. But the good news is it's been a tax increase for every taxing authority in Palm Beach County this year, with no exception. So just to go over a few of the high level numbers, of course, your market value is now at $4.2 billion. Taxable value is at 3.1. We're going to go over what the difference between those two numbers is. And your parcel count is just slightly over 4,000 parcels. A parcel is, of course, anything that can be taxed individually. So that means a condo building might have 300 parcels in it, whereas a single family home is just one. We just sort of bulk them together. It's our way of keeping track of where everything is, as it were. A parcel tells us, the actual place on the land or the place that can be taxed in the case of a condominium. So looking at your makeup, you are a very traditional residential community, primarily condominium and residential. If you see that the market value is on the left side, the reason I show this slide is that in cases where there's a lot of commercial property, quite often the contribution to taxable value will weigh heavier on commercial property than it will on residential because of the caps on residential property. In your case, this nice mix you have of residential, condominium and residential is sort of keeping that at bay. There is a small slices up there at the top, which I'll show you also in a little more detail of vacant land. There's a little bit of vacant land left. And there's also some what we call other, which actually makes up mostly government property and institutional property, things like churches, not-for-profits that are exempt. So this is starting at your 4.2 billion at the top. Market value is our highest level. It's the first value we place on all properties. Again, market value for us usually indicates anywhere from 80 to 85% of true market. The market that you might sell your property for. We are allowed to reduce it for basically that 15% for what we call cost of sale. So it might include your realtor fees. If anything happens in the transaction, we're allowed to reduce the sale by that much. We don't do it across the board. We do it statistically and averages kind of groups of properties, but it ends up being around 15%. And again, that market value is based on January 1st. We have a lot of people who receive their notice in August. They see their market value and they think, gosh, that seems low for what I could sell my property for. But of course, it is 8 months after the date that we have to set the value for, being January 1st. And it also includes that reduction, that 15%. But quickly here, the Save Our Homes differential is, of course, the amount that homesteaded properties are saving because they are homesteaded. Your community is interesting because only 40% of your residential property inventory, which would include both condo and residential single family, are homesteaded. So that's a good thing because it means that the rest of the community are not capped by that value. I guess it's a good thing if you're the government collecting the money. If you're the taxpayer, maybe it's not such a good thing. But the Save Our Homes is only on homesteaded property. So those are permanent residents of Florida making this their primary home. And that is 3% this year. So each year, the actual percent of the cap can shift. 3% is the maximum it can be. It's the change in the consumer price index year over year, or 3%, whichever is lower. Interestingly, the cap has been in place now for 25 years, and only 7 of those years has it been 3%. It's always been something lower than that. Now, the good news is there was that cap at 3%, because if you looked at the other part of the calculation, the change in the CPI, it was actually over 7% this year. So we're kind of glad, I'm glad as a homeowner, that it's kept at 3%. But what that does mean is that all your homestead owners are going to see a 3% increase in their value for sure. That's what they're going to be capped at, unless their value didn't go up, which would be unusual in this market. The 10% non-homesteaded assessment cap affects everyone else. So when I say everyone else, in your case, that would primarily be your snowbirds or your second homeowners, people who are not homesteaded, who may just come here for a portion of the year, may use this home may rent it if that's allowed. And those are all capped at 10%. Now, 10% is a big threshold. Not everything goes up 10% a year. This year, a lot of property did, but that is the amount that is saved by those owners there. So it comes down first to the other classifications there don't apply here in Highland Beach, but it comes down to your assessed value before we start exempting property is at almost 77%. The next slide shows you the exemption amounts. So further reductions happening in the left column, showing you the homestead exemption, the second homestead, or what we call additional homestead, which is just all property worth over $50,000 gets an additional $25,000 exemption. You currently don't have the age 65, which is actually an income limited age 65 exemption. The tangible personal property is on small businesses. Government, you can see there, which is such as the building we're standing in now. Institutional, again, I mentioned churches, not-for-profits and so forth. And then you have some other widowers, exemptions, disabilities, and so forth. So it gets us down to 74%. So your taxable value is 74% of your market. Now, I will tell you that's very healthy. I have seen that number as low as 50%. So I think it's great that you are a community where you're not losing all your value to exemptions and caps. And I was saying earlier, it's a nice mix here again of property types. Some communities have a very specific property type that they are. And a good example, South Palm Beach is all condominiums. Manalapan is primarily all single family residential. But because you have this nice mix here of both, you probably will do better if one piece of that tanks. It can really hurt a whole community if it's nothing but that. The next slide is just some thoughts I have for 2022. I like to do this. I ask my senior people in our appraisal departments just to sort of talk to me a little bit about what's happening in the community. I mentioned already 40% of your 4,200 parcels are homesteaded, which is, again, great. If it was higher, it can cause issues when the caps are lower because your value cannot go as much. I do think that certainly the strong first half of 2022 will create positive value in 2023, even if we see some major decline in value in the second half of this year. If you think about it, I have to look at the entire year of sales. So I'm not simply looking at the last quarter, I'm looking at everything. And we've had 6 really strong months in 2022, which will help with positive value in 2023. I also think your condominium inventory has a really good positive trend. And that's not the case with all condominiums communities. Sometimes you find the age issue with condos can cause some decline in its value over time. You seem to have strong condominium values, and that a lot of that is just to do with residents who are concerned about their condo communities and making sure they're not just maintained, but their values continue to increase because they provide a good product to prospective buyers. When you think about how many condo options a condo buyer has, it's great to see that they would come here and continue to pay, prices that grow, as opposed to saying, well, let me just pick the best of some bad options. They've got many good options here in Highland Beach. So with that, I'll just say thank you. That was my last slide. I am more than happy to answer some questions and talk about anything else related to us. Again, like I said, always nice to be here.
Okay, we'll start with John.
So given current trends where mortgage rates are going up, sales of homes are going down nationally, have we done in the past, and do you foresee a situation where the actual property values will decrease? Because they always seem to increase, right?
Well, we hate to try to project because we have seen it happen both ways. I've seen it happen both ways in my career in the office. We have had times before where we saw this accelerating value, and then we saw a sort of plateau of the value caused by national and international and some economic factors that are playing into the local real estate economy. We've also seen, as you all I'm sure saw in 07, 08, 09, when the values really accelerated and then crashed down quite, crashed down. We saw some years where we saw values countywide going up 25%, and then literally the next year dropping by 18 or 19%. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. I do think that there is certainly a local economy happening here simply because a lot of people are choosing to move at this point. A lot of people are choosing to leave the Northeast, leave California, leave places where they were, that was where their work was. And now they may be freed from that. They may be able to work from home. I've seen a lot of people who are close to retiring now having the option to work from home. So buying their retirement home and going ahead and moving to it, which happens to be here in Southeast Florida. So I think there's a lot of things at play that we don't really know the full answer to. So much of the market in the last, 12 months has been cash. And so it's interesting now that the interest rates are going up, that you wonder, well, what's going to happen? Are people still going to have the access to that same cash? And that may cause us not to have such an impact from the interest rate change. I don't know that we really know just yet. I do think there is going to be some insulation here because of our makeup and because of sort of the place, but I'm not sure if it's going to go
I
down.
only ask because, this is going to be a major increase, right? Based on increased values, and everybody can feel good about the values, but then they look at their tax bill and it's going to be substantial. So with everything now looking like we're going in, we're supposed to be in a recession, that it might continue, that they're asking, gee, will it come down a bit so that we can breathe a little bit more? And you're saying, well, man, maybe, but we have done that in the past.
Yes, and for interest's sake, when the values went up that 20% in the 09, 10, 7, 8 timeframe, many communities lowered their millage rates. I've heard a lot of communities being concerned that they wouldn't be able to raise them back, but many communities did. So they both lowered when the value went up and they raised when the value came back down. And we're all still here. Everybody's still going on. Even the county did that. Even Palm Beach County itself, they lowered and then they re-raised their rate and actually their rate came up higher than it was prior to the time they lowered it. So, everybody just kept on going. I think the public understand. I think they can see the dynamic, but again, that's me. Maybe I know too much about the process, but no, there is a history to this. It has been done before.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just for really curiosity's sake, how does the sale of a non-homesteaded condo, for example, affect the tax bill for the buyer who is not homesteading it?
Well, by law, the caps have to be removed when a property sells. So a buyer, whether they're buying a homesteaded or a non-homesteaded property, are going to see an increase. Maybe if they're buying a non-homesteaded property, they may just see that year's increase that clicked up from the year before. But if the non-homesteaded had that 10% cap on it or the 3% cap on the homesteaded, it comes off. So we have to do what we call return the property to market. And so that market value, that highest number, which is always disclosed on your notice, is what becomes the new value on that property moving forward. And so that's how it works. So yes, a lot of people, if you buy a homesteaded property, chances are you are going to see a higher tax bill. Then if you choose to homestead, if that's what you're going to do, then you begin getting that 3% increase year over year after that. It's why you have buildings that are just all over the place. One guy's paying a lot less than the next. Chances are that guy bought long before everyone else. But when they sell, their buyer will go up above everyone else. And so it sort of jumps all over. We do try to disclose this as much as we possibly can. It appears on our website. It appears everywhere we can. We ask our realtor supporters and friends, colleagues who I speak to a lot, to make sure they're explaining this. We have a calculator on our website that lets you see what the taxes are going to go to. We just got to get people to use it.
Thank you, because I get questions in my building all the time. Why am I paying this?
Yeah, when that one's paying that. Yes, exactly.
Following up on that though, a homesteader who sells and then gets another condo and wants the homestead, still has to wait a year.
Well, they can, if they sell, say today, they would be qualified, and they buy today in the new building, they would be qualified for 2023. So they can't, so if whatever they buy, they get to keep that person's benefit if they had homestead for this year, and then it will pop up and then they can apply for 2023. Their cap will not start working till 2024 because the homestead year, the year you qualify is called your base year. That's where we sort of set the value, and then every year it clicks up beyond that. Now you can port your homestead benefit, meaning the savings that you've accrued on one property. So let's say my market value is 600,000 and I'm only paying taxes on 400,000. That $200,000 differential, I can carry that to another home that I'm going to homestead. Anywhere in Florida, there's a lot of rules around portability, but it's a nice benefit so that new home, the first year, it will drop down that $200,000 that they ported or brought with them from their old home. It's a nice new benefit. Well, it's not, it started in 2009, but we're really seeing people taking advantage of it now.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Peggy Gossett-Seidman, and pardon my 3 minutes late.
Absolutely.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Yes, you too.
See you again. It was, I believe we have certain available situations for property taxes for citizens who are disabled, underserved, veterans. If you could speak to that, because not everyone in our viewing audience understands that. Sure,
Yes. So there are additional homestead benefits for those residents. You have to first be a homesteader. They are primarily tied to income limitations. So the disability exemption requires that you show an income limitation unless you are unless you are a paraplegic or hemiplegic. So you have full disability. Then they don't have an income limit on them. But the smaller disability benefits do have income limits on them. The veterans benefits, for the most part, don't have an income limitation but you have to be disabled. It's not simply being a veteran. It's being a disabled veteran, and it all can relate to your percentage disability according to the VA. So my advice is give us a call. If you think you may qualify for any of those, just call us, or you can look on our website. It has a lot of information there, but we're happy to kind of just go over what you might qualify for. There is one nice thing is the widower's exemption, which is exactly what it is. If you're a widow or a widower, has for almost 40 years been a $500 taxable value reduction. Well, $500 is about $10 in taxes. My Assessors Association last year, we worked very hard at it, and we were able to get the legislature to raise that to $5,000, which is about $100 savings. So we're really encouraging everybody who is a widow or a widower to get in touch with us. Very simple. You just send us a copy of the death certificate, and it's saving everybody another $100. And $100 is $100. So
absolutely. Thank you. Could you also just address that we have the one commercial property, the Delray Sands, and a smaller office within that, but the state does have a commercial tax. And I believe where Florida's the only one who has a 6% commercial property tax. And I just
on the
wondered,
rental.
yes, ma'am,
rental
we
tax.
have a lot of residents here who own their businesses, whereas their business isn't located in our town. But if you could speak to that, some feel that it might be a double tax. If you could just maybe speak to why that came about. I know it wasn't your doing personally.
I honestly don't know a lot about that. I know there is one. I know it's unusual. Many states have done away with them. But as to whether it's a double tax, I mean, if you are renting your space, yes, your landlord is paying property taxes on the space. Right. But I don't know that I don't want to say too much about it because I don't know enough about it. I know that there has always been a lot of talk about getting rid of it. But that, of course, would be a state level legislative decision.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
I hear that around town for those business owners, it's
Hmm.
particularly, I believe, COVID brought out a lot of those concerns for the small business owners.
Yeah, well, certainly the whole landscape of commercial property is starting to shift with
Yes, ma'am.
COVID.
Yes.
And so it'll be interesting to see, and also not just with COVID, with online retail and the ability of people not to necessarily need a footprint, an actual brick and mortar shop. And so, yes, a lot of that is changing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming out today.
Sure.
Hi, Dorothy. Thanks for
Hi.
coming. It's really nice to meet you and thanks for your time. Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. So the market values, can you give us an overview of how you come up with those market values and how recent what recent sales are used in deriving those market values?
Sure. So it's about the simplest example is a condominium. We will look at the transactions that occurred in that condominium in the prior year. We will take a look at, obviously we do factor in size to all of this. And in condominiums, depending on the building, maybe view, if you have some units that are full ocean and others that look at a parking lot, that can affect the values. But we're taking that whole building and one of our analysts is looking at those sales and they're making a decision about usually breaking it down to square foot and making a decision about whether they should raise the units, lower the units, all of them, their market value, or leave them the same. If there isn't enough data to really tell us, the market, if you throw out the upper and you throw out the lower and you kind of look at them all and you say, it's not really moving very much, we'll leave it at the same just to wait to get some more data about what's happening. So that's about the easiest example of how we calculate market value. We do not do it one by one. That's a fee appraiser's world. For us, it's all about mass appraisal. So we will take that whole building and we will adjust the entire building if we think that's necessary. The single family homes are a little trickier only because, especially in somewhere like Highland Beach, where you have the lovely ocean or intracoastal factor, we are most commonly looking at the land value independently from the structure. So we will look at what did the sales tell us about the location factor, which is what we're talking about when we talk about ocean or intracoastal or not. What did the sales tell us about how valuable it is to live on the ocean or live on the intracoastal? And we will value the land in that way. We'll sort of value all the land similarly based on its location by size. Again, we're going to look at the size of the land. If it's on the ocean, we're going to look at ocean frontage. And we do that with intracoastal as well. How much do they have on the ocean? And then the structures are a lot of times done using simple data regarding costs. So if it's a brand new build, we're going to look at what would it cost to replace, and we're going to calculate that value again by square footage and put that on the property. We do take into account that a garage is not as valuable as an under air living room sort of thing. So we'll separate the house into its parts, what's a porch, that's just screened in versus what's a garage versus what the main house is. And all of that gets a different percentage value. Now, again, this is all done in mass. So we'll look at an entire neighborhood. It is a little trickier in a community like this. We have an appraiser who works nothing but the barrier islands. We have somebody who works the south end and somebody who works further north. And so we're looking at transactions that are occurring not just in Highland Beach, but also probably up the coast into the other Manalapan and other communities as they move up the coast. And they're very available if you're ever want very specific, and they're the person that will talk to taxpayers who call from Highland Beach and tell them, these are the sales we saw. This is why we put your value where we put it.
So when the appraisers estimated the value for January of 2022, they looked at the 12 months of 2021. So all the way from January to the end of December. They don't differentiate those 12
No.
months.
They may, if we see some strange effect in the last quarter, they may actually sort of what we call time trend that, which is they sort of they don't say that's the market. They look at, okay, everything that happened. Now let's sort of give weight to the market because you don't want to appraise property in a sort of blip, as it were. You want to do it in a more, and that's why I mentioned sometimes we don't raise them because we don't have enough data that tells us to. It's a much more gradual process.
And so when I use your calculator, I guess in there in the instruction, it says to put the price of the sale, but should it really be the market value? Because it can be for buyers intimidating because they put the purchase price, but it's never going to be, I've never seen it be based on the purchase price. It's more the market value, like you said, that can be 80% or 85%. And sometimes it's a little bit more palatable. So is there a reason why you guys say purchase price in that calculator instead of what the market value is?
Yes, because sometimes the market value that's available, like today, it's August of 22. The market value that's available on that property that is on there from our office is from October of 21. So we don't want the taxpayer to get too low a number. So it's kind of why we say, put your purchase price in here. We're trying to give them the worst case scenario, because likewise with that problem, that the number that we could use today is last year's number, and it could have changed significantly, especially in this year. There's also the opposite problem, which is, say I buy my property in January, right? And that's my purchase price, and I get a good deal, and the market goes way up. And the next year I come in and the calculator wouldn't work the other direction. It's a really hard thing to do.
It is. And I totally agree.
I think we could probably, I've thought about, it's funny because I'm very involved with our website, always was through my career in the office. And I've thought about giving both, put in your purchase price, and also would automatically fill the market, and it would sort of say from to.
Somewhere between, right.
Somewhere
so around there.
You can know that you're going to hit this market value because this was last year's number.
Right.
Although in a declining market, it wouldn't work, but we could say, around this number. And we try to tell people, this is approximation, a lot can change. If you filed for Homestead, if you had portability coming from another, a lot can happen. But yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to know what to do. The worst case, we would not want them to think it's, one number under. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to put those two numbers.
Give them a from to.
Because it can really turn people away. And my other question is, does your team evaluate if they have enough data? Do they evaluate every subdivision every year?
Yes.
They do.
Yes,
Okay.
if they have enough data.
And what do you consider enough data?
Well, that would sort of depend on the neighborhood.
Okay.
So how it works in practice is we have, for instance, the South County office has a team of appraisers. I think there's 7 or 8 people. They each have hundreds of neighborhoods. But of course, all of this is happening statistically. So they're able to look at, okay, in neighborhood 0001, there were this many sales. The ratio compared to our value is now low. The ratio showing it, the sales versus the values is now at 60%. That tells them, okay, I'm going to look at that neighborhood.
Okay.
So a lot of this is happening using data,
right?
And then they're able to zero in on those are the neighborhoods I really need. They're my top priority. I need to get those this year, and they will dive deeper into those neighborhoods. That's why I say we don't always move them every year. We're going to look at that first, and we're going to see how close we are to what the market tells us about that neighborhood.
So if you have a condominium that only has 20 units, and let's say there just weren't enough transactions in that year, would you look at other subdivisions that were similar and nearby?
Yes.
And so that's that, even though in that condominium that didn't meet your threshold of number of transactions, you would look broader and still possibly adjust those market values depending on what you see.
Yes, and we would look for similar age, similar location, things like that to just sort of try to get, okay, this is a similar product.
Mhm.
Let's now sort of bulk those as you were into its own grouping, and then we'll move it all together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then just my last comment, the somewhat benefit of the caps is when the property from a taxing authority, because I guess you could look at it from both sides, is as the prices are increasing, we have this 13 point whatever percent increase this year because of those caps, the 3%, even the 10%, because the market values have gone up. We can almost expect to see increases in assessable value for some time, right? Because even if the market adjusts downward a little bit, all those homesteaded properties that were only capped at 3%, we can almost, kind of expect that assessable values will continue to increase for some time because we never realized the increase in the first place. It was capped. So for the few years, we should continue to see some increases in assessable value.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
correct. So you've hit on a beautiful point, which is tough in a downward market, because even though values are declining, until your market value meets
Right.
your capped value,
Right.
your cap value by law must continue to increase. So
Right.
you may have, this happened
Right.
in 07, 08. Market values were dropping, but we had to continue to notch up every homesteaded property by the capped amount for that year until they met. Once they meet, they go down together if there's
Mhm.
more for them to go down.
Mhm.
That's a really tough place for
Right.
taxpayers.
Right.
But for you, yes, as taxing authorities, you can bank on continuing to get that appreciation unless there was some enormous drop off in the market. But
Mhm.
yeah, the thing you can't bank on is how much it's going to be. Because again, 3% was this year. Again, only 7 years of the last 25. I've seen it as low as 0.7%. So it's some years it can be very, very small, that benefit, if you will, from having the capped properties. What I like in your community is that you don't have 70% of your property homesteaded, which I've seen plenty of places. You have 40%. So you have that 60% all with the 10 cap, but 10% is a lot. You could go up 6% one year, the next year 6% more, the next year 6% more, and you'd never have to worry about that cap impacting that.
But the
value.
problem from the taxing authority's perspective is the assessable values will be more in line with the market value. So it will fluctuate sooner
Mhm.
than another community that does have 70% homesteaded.
True, but again, that other community's got to worry about it being 0.7%, not 3%.
It
in any-
depends on the inflation.
Right.
So if they
right.
get inflation under control, then it'll be less than the 3% cap.
Mhm. Last year it was 1.8%. Year before it was 1.7%. So that's more the sort of reasonable number, 1.5%.
Yeah, that's what the Fed
Yeah.
targets, right? Is the 2%.
Exactly. So you got a lot of different things at play. But certainly, yes, the cap benefits a community when they've seen this much appreciation over the next few years. There will be that benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's it.
Thank you. My questions have already been answered, but I'd like to do something that's a little unusual. If you have a few more minutes, I'd like to open it up to anybody sitting here that has any questions. If anybody would like to ask any questions that haven't been covered, please approach. Come up, you have to come up to the microphone, give us your name and where you're from. Ask whatever questions you have. We'll try to get you an answer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My name is Timothy Rotolo. I'm a resident of Highland Beach, and thanks, Ms. Jacks, for all the information. I probably wasn't paying close enough attention when you first put your slides up, but I think one of them said something about, maybe the first one, about the market value being 42 or 4.2 billion. And I think your commissioner, Miss Peggy, may have mentioned that there's just one commercial property in Highland Beach, being the Delray Sands.
Correct. Well,
And I
there's
think-
also another office there, but yeah, go ahead.
I thought that slide said that the market value of the or of that commercial property was 37 million.
We can bring the slide up if you'd like.
And I don't think it specifically says it, but if that's your only commercial property, then that may be it. I would need to verify that.
What is your question, sir?
Oh, that was the question. I was wondering if maybe she could put the slide back up.
Sure.
And
Can we
And I
bring
had
the
a-
slide up, please?
a question about the, what you had said about that slide.
Probably the third slide. This one, right?
So it's 36 million.
Looks like it, yep.
And then I think you got into talking about how the 4.2 billion was reduced by some 20% of costs.
Yeah, the taxable was 3.1.
So were you saying that the 4.2 billion was reduced by 20%, or it was reduced from 5 billion to 4.2
No,
billion?
No.
the 15 to 20% is prior to setting the market value. And it's more on residential property than commercial. It's what we call cost of sale. We were talking about the sale data that we gather, and we don't use it at its full value. We usually discount it up to 85, around 85% of what we call true market to get to our market number.
So that would put it more at 5 or so billion before the 20%.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that, but if you just added every single transaction, of course, transactions don't all occur in 1 year. This is 4 billion is the value of the whole community. We're assessing everything, whether it sells or not. So the 80 to 85% is on the sales they occur. So if you have however many sales you have in the community over a year, say if you have a condo and you have 10 sales of the condo, that's what would be discounted, not the $4 billion. That's not being discounted.
Okay,
This is all going to be available tomorrow online. So
Okay.
you don't have to take copies of it.
all right. Well, I just wanted
It'll
to
all be
ask
there for you.
one other question, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, that there was another slide where you were talking about the assessed values and all the exemptions. And there's a line item on there about additional 25K homestead age 65, and the reduction was 0.
Highland Beach, all the cities can opt into providing the age 65 limited income exemption. And Highland Beach hasn't opted into.
Oh.
We have about 7 or 8 cities out of the 39 that have, and the county has, but those are the only taxing authorities that have opted into having it. Once you have it, then your residents can qualify for it. If they qualify, the income's around $30,000 a year. So it's very limited income for seniors over 65. It's not every senior over 65. It's just limited income seniors.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Sir, for the record, can you please spell your last name?
It's spelled RUOTOLO.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mayor, I have a question. Just
Sure.
to follow up. When talking about data, do you share your data with insurance?
Sure. We share our data with anybody that asks. Yeah.
So
Is that what you mean, like as a public
as
record?
they come up with their valuation for a building, that sets their insurance rates. So I'm trying to understand how much of that data from the insurance company mirrors your data.
I don't think. Our data, of course, is very available on our website. And if you want it in bulk, you can call our office and we'll give it to you in a different format, certainly. I don't know. I cannot tell you if any insurance companies are proactively doing that each year. I do know that insurance companies are a huge user of our website. I get that a lot when I'm speaking to them. But is there a one-to-one? Not that I'm aware of. I don't think they're required to use our data.
Well, and of course, the problem is that insurance rates are really spiking badly. And everybody is scratching their head, what the heck are we going to do? And then, you know, they can go back and say, well, I'm using county data here, and so that's why you need to pay this bill.
And it actually is a little frustrating to us because we, of course, are not an insurance company. I mean, we're a property tax department that is trying to arrive at a correct value. So the data you would want as an insurance company might be very different, such as what is the house made of? What kind of roof do they have? And although we have a little bit of that data, it's not terribly important to how we value property.
Right.
So we always say to the insurance companies, you know, this is what you're being paid for. Go out and look at the property. I mean, they're after all not doing it en masse. They're doing it, you know, they're doing your policy and everybody is independent. So it is a tough one though. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
I guess I just have one thing that I'm just remembering now that had come up in a previous meeting. So if somebody buys a home and does a major renovation, but doesn't change the square footage, doesn't add a pool, just basically the finishes on the inside, that would not affect their market value, correct?
It depends. We of course have access to the permitting data. So the permits are coming to us actually very conveniently from all the cities via an upload, a beautiful new portal that we've provided, and thankfully everybody is cooperating and providing us the data. So we're getting the permit data daily. So if somebody pulled permits to, let's say, replace their kitchen, replace their baths, redo their roof, redo their driveway, put in impact windows, all of that, how we would notice, we would say, you know, they must be gutting their house and redoing their house, even though they're not taking down a wall. We would notice, and we would probably adjust what we call the effective age of that house. And that will impact its value, although if they are capped, it will not affect the cap. Because the law says that we can only add value to the cap if they increase the size of the property. So you kind of get an increase. We're in the market value, but your cap won't adjust for that increase. Now, if you add a room, a second floor,
Right.
you
Square
enclose
footage
a
is different
garage,
story.
then we add that to your cap, and the next year you start again at that higher number. But if you are just doing what we might call cosmetic improvements, if they're substantial, and I don't mean you just rip out a bathroom, I mean you've got to be doing everything, we will adjust the age of the house. So every house has an age. I used to live in a house built in 1952, but we had the effective age in the 1990s because it had been renovated over all those years and was a relatively modern house. So we call that actual age and effective age, and the effective age will be adjusted if you do a major renovation to a house, even if you never change the floor plan.
How about a condo that's 40, 50 years old and they do a major renovation inside? How would that be?
You know, with higher value condos where we know that sort of thing will play in significantly to the market, we may make adjustments to the effective age. Again, same process. We see the permits, we look at it as a whole, and we may make an adjustment. It is more unusual in lower price condos. And the reason I say that is you don't see that much of a market fluctuation. And it's also important to remember with renovation, you know, one man's $40,000 kitchen is another man's tear out, right? I mean, it's all about taste, which is really why we don't put all that much stock in it. It's more important to us that they change the roof because they're trying to get their insurance managed in some way. We understand that they change the roof or they put in the impact windows are important. You know, that can add value. A lot of buyers won't even look at a home that doesn't have them already because they don't want to go through that headache. So things like that really do affect the market, but a lot of things, cosmetic things especially, and just updating a unit may not. It sort of depends on the property.
Thank you.
Oh, we have one more. Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Judith Goldberg. So I do realize that the market value of the tax is based on an individual unit sale. But when we talk about aging, the effective age, what impact, if any, will the extensive concrete renovations have when the value of the overall community, I'm thinking specifically on condo community. So you could go up significantly after the restorations that may occur over a period of years. What effect, if any, will that have on the assessed value of the market value?
Things like that where you are improving the building, which is great. I mean, very important, can be seen, we would again consider that in adjusting the effective age of the whole building. So each unit might see an adjustment in their market value. Again, if they're capped, they wouldn't see an impact of it because that's just an age adjustment. Sometimes we'll see the impact in the actual transactions that begin occurring, because you'll see that people are willing to pay a bit more in a building where that work has already been done. It's also important to know that we will not do anything until it's finished. I know sometimes these projects can take years and you might think, well, they're working on the south side and then they're working on the west side. We're not going to do anything to the whole building until everything is done. So it can take sometimes a number of years to see it. But what we would do in a case like that is probably adjust the market value. And then again, the age of the house is what's actually, age of the building is what's, you know, we've adjusted the age of the building to show that there's been this maintenance project done.
Okay, I think we're talked out.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for coming, spending the time with us. Extremely informative.
Good. I'm
And,
so glad. I appreciate all the very intelligent questions too. It's great to, you know, talk about our subject. You can probably tell, you know, it's an art, not a science in a lot of ways. But, you know, I'm a big believer in being very transparent about what we do. Feel free anytime, anybody to reach out to us and we'll be happy to explain.
time well spent. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we will now back up to public comments. Anybody? Jack, go right ahead.
First, I want to thank Judith Goldberg for offering me her 3 minutes of the floor. My name is Jack Halpern, 4511 South Ocean Boulevard, Highland Beach. Since Sunday, I might preface this that I'm presently the chair of the Committee to Save Highland Beach. We have a mailing list of about 2,200 people. Since Sunday, we've received several dozen emails, and I have to say, only one from what I can tell had any comments to say about the building department that was negative. Overall, most of our people were very satisfied with the work the building department has been doing here in Highland Beach. So thank you, Jeff Remus, and the building department staff. However, of the several dozen emails received, not one endorsed the town's concept of taking over Gulfstream's permitting and inspection work. They were all strongly against it, even if it meant that there would be no additional revenue flowing into the town's coffers or greater efficiencies. Our understanding is that if we add Gulfstream permitting revenues to Highland Beach permitting revenues, that it would provide additional funds to cover the overhead cost of the building department in Highland Beach. So instead of the building department operating at zero net revenue, they would be making money, which they would then pass to the general fund. Hence, Gulfstream would be providing funding to the Highland Beach's general fund. Let's be clear. If Gulfstream could find no other alternatives, I know I, for one, would support helping a neighbor. But this is not a financial hardship for them. One of our writers wrote, they are the 11th richest municipality in the entire United States. So money's not a problem for them. They had 3 bids to provide services and were in in discussion without present consultant to provide these same services. If our commissioners were to talk to our residents and not just their cronies, our commissioners would find out that our residents are not interested in the possibility of saving a few dollars or some increased efficiency. We do not want to service Gulfstream. We want our own exclusive full-time police, fire, water, and building department. Let's take a moment and talk about the charter referendum at the last election proposed by this commission to change the town charter. There were 5 proposed charter changes, 4 failed, but 1 passed by over 90% of the residents. Let me refresh your memory of that change, that one change to the charter that was passed by over 90% of our residents. And I will read. Shall the town of Highland Beach amend its charter to adopt section 2.0131 to provide that the town may not transfer control, abolish, merge with, or sell the services of fire rescue, the services of fire rescue, police, or water unless approved by a referendum vote of the electorate. This resolution proposed by this commission was to void the sale of our services by any future commission. And we commend you proposing that change to the charter. However, what does our building department services look like when the town residents are against selling services? The Gulfstream proposal is not in the spirit, and I repeat, the Gulfstream proposal is not in the spirit of that charter change that you recommended, which was passed over by over 90% of our town residents. Commissioners, turn down this equal interlocal agreement with Gulfstream today. All is good now, and commissioners, you have done some good things. Other than a financial saving and maybe some efficiencies, there is no real advantage to the Highland Beach residents, but the converse, making our citizens second class in their own town. Yes, we want our town run as a business, but not by hawking our wares so we can make money and reduce our cost. We do not need to hear how well we can do financially or more efficiently by this deal. Stop this now. Don't prolong this. The residents of this town deserve better. Commissioners, vote this down now. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? Any other comments? No? Okay. Public comments are now closed. Let's move on to discussion on the acceptance of the proposed budgets for fiscal year 23. Turn it over to David.
Thank you. Do you have the presentation? You know, the budget presentation, I think this is the 3rd time, 4th, thank you. The 4th time we've talked about it. So not going to go into, yes, yeah, that's it. Yep. Not going to go into a lot of the details, but you know what, we'll definitely go through it just as a refresher. Stop me if you have any questions. There'll be, you know, there'll be one other presentation which will change a little bit of these numbers just from data that we've recently gotten, i.e. we're combing through some information about health insurance, right? We already know that that's going to be going up. We budgeted 7% and it might go up, you know, 19%. So, but again, or FRS contribution.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Back up.
Yeah.
You just said it might go up. How
Yes,
much?
so we have some preliminary numbers from Humana on its renewal. They gave us a shocking number at first. Our broker reached back out and asked for a renegotiation from them. The numbers have come down, but they're around 19% increase. Now, what they're saying is if you were to look back at the Humana premiums over the last 2 years, we saw those reductions to a reduction of cost, or only 2 years ago, we got an increase of like 4 or 5%.
Right.
There's also some activity, some health costs that we've had to cover for those that are covered that are somewhat expensive, but that's to be expected. So we'll be meeting on Monday to discuss that and possibly looking at a couple other bids that we got. So we're going to evaluate that, but the 7% seems to be a little low. 19, I'm not trying to scare you, but the broker's saying that Humana's holding pretty hard at 19 to renew what we've got. Might be an opportunity for us to look at Florida Blue or I don't want to go back to United. That was a mess. So Florida Blue might be a competitive, Cigna and Aetna won't bid on it. They're just that their prices are too high to be competitive with even Humana. So we're in a changing healthcare market. Maybe they're trying to make up some margin they lost over the last couple of years over COVID. But again, there'll be some adjustments. That number is not hugely significant, but it's a number that's going to adjust and hit the budget a little bit, and we'll have to do some tweaking as we move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's, we were expecting it. Again, I was very conservative on the revenue side of life. I was a little bit more aggressive. I didn't foresee that much of an increase in the health insurance at that rate. But when we look at it, the next time we discuss this, you'll have obviously better numbers.
What kind of money are we talking about?
The increase it'll probably be somewhere around $100,000 additional. Yeah.
Not trivial.
It's worth a discussion.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, right. No, it is. I mean, the budget is $13 to $14 million, and yeah, it's $100,000 on, but it spreads across all the departments: water, sewer, building, general fund, and whatnot. So, anyway, we're still, as you're aware, we set our maximum millage at 3.6. As the property appraiser was just presenting that information. And but right now, we're pretty comfortable with the proposed millage to retain at the 3.5875. And
Wait a minute, I just want to, so none of the numbers that we've seen so far in this package, even with notwithstanding Humana, has changed.
Not in that. We just got the insurance yesterday. I wasn't able to go through and change that. So
Separate from Humana, we're still dealing with the same numbers. I just want to make sure that
Correct.
Yeah.
there's no surprises up there.
No
I
changes.
see that they match, but the $100,000 number
Not in
could
there.
have an impact on our millage, is what you're suggesting.
No, we were 100,000. I think David and I could pencil that through the system, through the budgets to balance
Adjusted, okay.
because we know we've been very conservative in our estimations on both sides, revenues and expenses.
revenues, right.
So we can handle that without any change necessary.
And we,
But again, we may have to look at a couple more spots at $100,000. We're gonna have to be a little bit more careful, and we'll let you know where those adjustments are made.
Sure.
and we've heard that the town doesn't seem to be so sensitive about tax increases, so it may not be a problem.
I don't say, we're not, read my lips, no, but,
We are very concerned about tax increases, okay?
Anyway, sorry but yeah, but the next round, you do see that, as information comes in, just like, probably not as, technically as the property price, but as information comes in, we want to make sure that we update and things like that. And so, again, you've seen these numbers, the general fund, right? The general fund the general fund alone is at, $14 million. And again, we've walked through what the changes here were. What's going to change on this, you'll see that, you'll see that the payroll, where that health insurance is located on this one here, is under salaries and related. So obviously, that'll go up. That right now, based on the information that we have. Again, nothing's been inked as a deal or anything like that. Our broker is still working things out. So you're absolutely right. The of the 14 million, it might go up to 14,175 or 14,200 or what have you. But we'll nail that down. Obviously, we have until September to nail that down. These right here again are the inside the general fund. This right here is the each of the departments in there, and again that includes salaries related and also operational expenses. And we've discussed this already, that the biggest push is right there is that fire department. And we also looked at what our general fund balance, looking at the projections of what we believe. But again, we're still somewhat committed right now at this point that no pledge from reserves for the 2023 are needed. This right here is the sales surtax fund. You know, we use most of these dollars for those big purchase items, heavy equipment and whatnot. That's the state of Florida has obviously been very healthy with our sales surtax. So our capital plan, fund balance, our building department, as we discussed, these numbers here have the potential interlocal agreement revenue in there of $300,000 just as a placeholder. But again, the variable cost, the expense side, since we are anticipating to outsource all of that additional work if that interlocal agreement does come in, and it won't add any additional fixed costs to this department.
Okay, but.
Oh, yes,
Can I interrupt?
you absolutely.
That's important to note. So that's 300,000.
300,000.
And yet we just got a surprise on 100,000 increase potentially from Humana. And there may be, given the state of the economy and the state of what's going on, everything's going up in prices. It would seem that there's one or two other entities that could spike some increases that would be significant. Can you name one or two of those as you look at this?
Can I name one? No.
Yeah, the other one that David hit that we're going to work through is the FRS. They've adjusted the contribution amounts by about 2 to 3% per covered class. So the high risk class, think police, fire, senior management class, Jeff, David, think town employees, that would be public works, water treatment operators. Those all went up a couple percent, which will have another impact on our budget that we are working through now. So we got those adjustments, and because it's adjusted on the state budget, they gave us a July 1 change.
Right. And the other thing too to note is that August the state of Florida meets for their estimating conference, right, for their estimated revenues. Okay, so sales tax revenue, gas tax revenue. I was very conservative in where I think the revenues are going to be. So again, I think that we're still going to be relatively close. We already know based on a millage rate, right, what we believe ad valorem taxes will be, and so we know that piece of the puzzle. The question marks, which will slowly get filled in, or we'll be able to see a little bit more clearly, are those shared type of revenues: sales tax, gas tax, franchise fees,
Revenue sharing.
Yeah, a revenue sharing. You can see back here. Let's go back here. Right there, right? So intergovernmental, that's 700, or going to be $823,000. Franchise fees. I was very conservative in upticking those. Okay, but those two will be updated as well, and my prediction is that they will increase as well on the revenue side. So again, I understand that bad news doesn't get better with time. And so, at the end of the day, I'm going to give you all the information that I have, but it's again, $150,000, $200,000 on a $14 million budget.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not significant. I'm saying that we have some coverage.
Yeah. So David, at least from my perspective, and not to interrupt the flow, it's just that I don't want to be so, I don't want to be of the opinion that, 300,000-400,000 additional revenues we don't need if we have a building department that has some upside potential. At the same time, I don't want to take the attitude that these people are rich enough they can pay taxes, right?
No.
This is kind of what Del Rey got into, thinking that Highland Beach is this little rich enclave that maybe was a little arrogant and they need to pay up. And so from my perspective, I'm thinking always there's 2 or 3 surprises. Going to be anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000 of downside potential
Sure.
in a volatile year, given what we're looking at and the turmoil that's going on.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the detail. I appreciate that you have built in some contingencies
Mhm.
and some buffers.
Yeah.
So that we can deal with the surprises. So then, right now, you're still, and I'm asking a second time.
Yes.
Hate to do this, David.
No,
You're still convinced that we've got enough of this contingency built in so that we're not going to be forced into a situation where we're in trouble.
That's
budget-wise.
that's correct. Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Quick question about, is that the right one? It's, if you could advance, I think 3 more slides.
Sure.
Oh, that one.
This one here. So
Can
we're,
you
yep.
elaborate on the town manager line, the drop of the
Yes, I
97,000?
yes, like,
Yeah, so I know you all received that. And again, Jeffrey, thank for your kind words out there if you're watching or watching later. The reduction in the manager's budget is moving staff around and the creation of the shared service department or shared service functional area that was spelled out in the matrix study needs to come online to help us support the addition of 28 more employees that will be facilitating the fire 26 to 28 to support the fire rescue services. So we've brought somebody in to do HR or take that role and function, and then also add some support service there to handle all of this, change your policies, purchasing, all these new things that are going to ramp up when we add 40% to our staffing levels. We got to be prepared for. So we took some that were
yep, no, we're
with me
right,
this
right
year
here.
that'll be out
The-
next year.
That'll
So there
be
is no
right there.
reduction in anyone's salary that.
No.
I know, but I got that question. I think you got that question. I just want to make it very obvious. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. So yeah, so again, as the news, as we get closer to that September 30th, we'll be on track. That's the building department will have more discussions on that. The water and sewer, right? August is going to be a big month. We're still a couple weeks out from getting those final meter reads. Right. But we are putting into each of the customer's bills, the notice that, hey, there will be per the plan. We're still moving forward with that. The rate increase on the water and the rate increase on the sewer. So we place that on the bills. And again, I'm just thankful that the commission is in support to stay the course, stay on track. We're going to make the 2 enterprise systems, right, be able to stand on their own 2 feet as they should. And so yeah, that'll be coming in. So we'll have a meeting, I think, in September. And we'll get all that advertised and whatnot. So, and I'll be able to handle the discussion points, but I'm waiting. Hopefully we're about 2 weeks out to see what the latest meter reads and water and sewer revenue is going to be. So stay tuned for that. Water and sewer. Again, just to remind everyone that, again, the debt service down the line is going to go down a little bit, again, making it a little bit more healthier. But again, we've been through a lot of these numbers already. The next presentation that I will give you, we will update all these numbers. But at the end of the day, yeah, general fund is 14.07 million. The total in which that $100,000 increase, just what we're talking about, or $200,000 swing, what we're talking about, is based on a $22.8 million budget. You know what I mean? All the funds together, water, sewer. So that costs, not only just hits our general fund, right? But it also goes to water. It also goes to sewer and building and whatnot. So it was to be expected. And so, but still very healthy. And these right here, are just kind of the next steps. We're meeting today. We'll possibly have maybe the 18th, probably, hopefully, maybe the 25th, as we get more information in, would be a better meeting date. You see right here, we have August 4th, 18th, and 25th. Probably the 25th would probably be better a better time frame to allow just a little bit more margin to get additional data in. We'll definitely have the water, the sewer. Hopefully we'll lock down on insurance. And we'll be, again, the goal that we need to do is, the September 16th to get ready for the October 1 date statutorily.
And again, on the 25th, you will be voting for the healthcare, just making your selections of healthcare because we need lead time for open enrollment too. So it's a kind of a type thing that 18th on there, if you recall from the budget, is the FAB meeting. The 18th doesn't work. So it's going to be the 23rd. I'm going to see David out there. So the 23rd, and they will be reviewing the healthcare to make a series of recommendations to the commission on the 25th. So we can get that approved and then get our broker to start setting it up with whatever selections we've made.
So a lot of great information for us to make decisions on will be coming down the pipe. And that's all I have here.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions from anybody? No. All good? Okay, thanks, David.
My pleasure.
Let's move on. Item F is resolution number 2022-016. Resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending resolution number 2021-028, which appropriated funds for the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget and providing an effective date.
That's a
Back to you.
mouthful. Yeah, that's a mouthful, right? I'm hoping I got all those dates correct when I wrote it. So what this is this is a good problem to have, right? And not a problem, but it's something that we have to do. And so when we set out for the 2022 fiscal year, we estimated how much we would do in building fund revenue, right? And we also estimated how much CAP was going to cost us. Keep in mind, our contract with CAP Governmental Services is a variable, right? So the more building permits that we issue out there, right, the more our fixed costs stay the same, but the more variable cost, i.e. we have got to pay a CAP. And so our building department is doing great. And so therefore I need a budget amendment because I've only budgeted back in the current fiscal year, FY22, I only budgeted so much of expenditures. And so what this budget amendment does is it increases their contract so that we can pay them because we've increased so much more revenue. So we're going from, let me see, what is it? What did I say?
So we're going from $1,022,000 to 1.172. So we're recognizing
Yes,
an additional 150,000.
Yep. Thank you. And so the next question is, well, where are you pulling that from? Well, we're going to be pulling that from building and permits revenue. Our revenue is so much farther up in the building fund department that we're not dipping into our reserves. We're not dipping into any of that. We're dipping into current year revenues in the building department, right? That coincide with the variable expense CAP government to increase their contract. So at the end of the day, I need a budget amendment so that I can bring up from $275,000 other contractual services, which is predominantly CAP. I need to bring it up to $425,700.
Then we need a motion.
I move that we accept resolution number 2022-016.
I'll second it. All in favor?
I,
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, moving on to resolution number 2022-17. This was the 5% economic relief payment and 2.5% to the union personnel. Unfortunately, we have found that we cannot do this. But Marshall and I have come up with yet another way to skin the cat. So we want to, we suggest taking this off of the agenda. And at our next meeting, we'll come back with Plan B.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you want to talk
So-
about Plan B or no?
not until we get it all the way
Okay, got
down.
it.
So can we have a
So-
motion?
We need a motion to remove this from the agenda.
I move we remove resolution number 2022-017 from the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. Let's move on to item H, which is resolution number 2022-8018. Resolution in the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, adopting a merit increase policy for non-union employees and amending the Town of Highland Beach salary table and providing for an effective date. Turn this over to Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. This is similar to basically it's a salary warrant or resolution that we've passed in previous fiscal years. It's consistent with the budget that David and I have presented to you. It's a 5% merit increase for those that have performed satisfactorily at their annual audit. And then it also has a 3% table adjustment, salary table. So we have a salary table that lists all the positions where it shows what the minimum pay, midpoint, and high points, basically a classification. We have 10 through 38. So we have 28 classes for these positions. So this is to adjust that table. It's not a payment to the employees, but it does give headroom, if you will, or runway on the salary table and allows us to stay, as we made those adjustments last year, to be in the first quartile of pay for these classifications amongst South Florida communities. Not second, not third. We're just into the first quartile. So we're just into the discussion. We're not saying that we're at the top pay, but we're at the bottom. So we finally got ourselves to be comparable with the lower paying communities around South Florida. So we finally got ourselves into that realm. This allows us for a 3%, if you will, adjustment to the table. So the employees salary only changes 5%. The table adds 3% to those three numbers and allows the table to grow with the cost of living over time. So that's what you had before you today, similar to last year.
Any questions or comments on it?
I'm sorry. You're saying 3% is comparable to other low-end communities?
So the exercise, if we recall, and this is good to go over this for folks that are listening. So in 2011, the commission at that time here started a salary compensation study. It showed a series of numbers that should be followed. At that point, the commission got scared off by those numbers, went with something else, created a salary table for the position. So you'll see the library director, you'll see the building official, the police chief, the finance director, water plant operator A, B, C. And after they took those 2011 numbers, they adopted it and then left it. Didn't touch it until last year. So basically, we went a decade without any salary table adjustments, no cost of living adjustments to the salary amounts. So last year, we did some changes and movements and started getting us or working towards first quartile. So the Florida Human Resource Organization puts out an annual survey study that we communities all participate in. And basically they do average, median, and they have all these different types of job descriptions, whatever those might be, right? Water plant operator A, how much are they paid in Miramar? How much they paid here? How much are they paid in Vero Beach, Fort Myers? And basically they go across all this data and then they say, here's the low end, they put it in a ranking order. These are the high end communities. Miami, right? South Florida, south you go from here, salaries go up pretty quickly. Almost every 10 miles, salary goes up about 10%, it seems, 5%, just because the cost of living starts to really skyrocket as you move south. So then they basically put in quartiles. So they group all of those salaries into basically 4 quarters. First quartile is the lowest quartile. Last year was the last push to get us into the first quartile. We weren't even registering as a quartile. So You have all expressed with me that we need one to ensure we can recruit folks. We'll see a lot of that, especially in the police side. We're going to really be working on that as we go back out to collective bargaining. And then to retain folks. But when you're not in the first quartile, probably said why we only got 1 or 2, 3 people to apply for jobs when they opened. Because getting here and living close by to work in the scenario, we just weren't paying there. So we moved everybody to the first quartile. And now my process is to at least keep us there in the meantime, which is the cost of living adjustment. Inflation in June was what, David? 9%? I'm asking for 3% to adjust that table, right? So doing our best to stay on par that when we do have openings and I need a water plant operator, I need a police officer, and I go out and no one shows up, I need to be able to at least keep us on board that we could find some folks to come in and play. So we've got ourselves to that first quartile and comparable to other communities. The 3% is to keep us on par and moving along with the rest of the communities.
Well, I appreciate your long answer.
Yeah,
And
sorry.
detailed, comprehensive, as usual, from our town manager. I was really thinking 3% seems low to me. Why not a 4% kind of number? Is there an analysis or something that we should consider?
Yeah, he just gave it to you.
Well, I just feel like 3 is too low.
Well,
No,
that's not the increase that people would be receiving.
no, it's the table increase.
Correct.
I got it. I
Yeah.
understand. But is that table increase still too restrictive at a 3% change?
I would bet if I asked most of my leadership team, they would say yes, but I tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side. So I didn't move it as much. There'd be people to say that those jumps. I worked with a colleague of mine who's down in Braemar Isles. Was it Braemar Islands? What is it?
Not Braemar.
It's just
Not
south
Braemar
of
Islands.
Surfside.
That's,
Was it Bay Harbor Islands? Thank you. Sorry. You guys tied in with our condos. They have the same names as
Right.
cities sometimes. So Bay Harbor Islands, what are they doing? Barrier Island, Miami-Dade, about the same size, condos. They produce water. How do you get people to show up? I don't want to show you their salary tables because it'd blow your mind how much they have to pay to attract people to come. And they've done other creative solutions to compressed work weeks, give out gas cards. They're doing things to get people to come to work because it's so expensive down there, especially to pay somebody to be, you name the position, an accountant, to be a clerk, all of those things to cost to drive there. So they just went through the same exercise that I did, but they had to elevate it. They found themselves significantly below that. And their commission there said, first quartile isn't satisfactory. We want to be second or third quartile so we get the best possible talent. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. I'm not asking you to cross that bridge, but it's kind of what everybody's doing. 3% probably is low based on the current inflation condition. But if we're going into recession, does that depress it? I don't know because the costs don't seem to be dropping.
And again, just because you're raising it 3% or even 4%, it's not like you're raising salaries. It just gives you breathing room on each of those profiles.
Correct.
Less.
Again, just for folks out there, employees move within the salary table based on the merit increase that you approve. So
Right.
we said 5%. So they'll move within this spread, okay, the 60% spread from low to high. They come in, they work here, and they move at the merit amounts within that. We're just asking for those start, mid, and high points to move with the inflationary. So as they move, they're moving comparable to their colleagues in other communities.
Okay, so my final comment would be that, look, I also see that cloud from south of us moving north every year, where we become more expensive in terms of our cost of living and so forth. So for us to make sure that we have an attractive salary table to get good people, I just want you to know, I'm personally in favor of giving you a little more flexibility in that regard. Not that we have to change anything right now. I go on your judgment. You've already submitted 3%, but going forward, I'm more supportive of ensuring that you have the flexibility to hire the kind of people we need in our building department and police and so forth. Yes, please wouldn't.
let me speak for you for a second, if I may. I assure you that he's fully aware that he has that flexibility and he has the support. We're
Not on
not,
a table.
okay.
I
We're
mean,
not, we're not gonna let good people go. Okay. And we'll stretch where we have to for sure.
Excellent, Mayor. Thank
Okay.
you.
I guess one question I have is, are people's, like, where are people's salaries falling in there? So the way we used to analyze it is how many people are getting capped by the maximum and where are they falling within that spectrum? And sometimes if you are butting against the top, that gives you an indication. And I imagine you already analyzed.
I'm going to shoot from the hip and say about a third, right around there, 30 to 40% of our employees are at the top.
Are being capped, are not.
Are
getting
hitting the
the-
cap.
They're
hitting
not
their
getting
seat.
their merit increases.
No, they get
because
their merit increase. And again, how it works is once you hit your cap, you still get a merit increase that's paid over 26 pay periods. But the next year, your salary that which your next merit increase is based on that capped amount. So let's say we'll pick $75,000. So say you're making that the cap, you get a 5% merit of whatever 5% of that is. So you get like $3,700 that'll be paid out over 20. So your salary goes up to, 78. Next year, when we do the merit increase, you're starting at 75, not at the 78. So it doesn't continue to expand. You hit the cap and then you just get the merit on the cap and then it resets. You just do that. Then you get in the spin cycle. Chief Hartman was in the spin cycle for like 8 years, maybe 9, where his salary was at the cap. So he just reset. His salary never changed over an 8-year period. But if you got a 5% cap, it was 5% on that number. And then it reset back to the lower number, 5% and come back to the lower number. So
it's not a real increase for those.
not really. It's just a merit kind of pay over base. Their underlying base pay doesn't grow. We've made those adjustments to get us into that first quartile. We were in like sub quartiles that, what we were paying folks, nobody was paying around there, unless you were in Northern Florida, right? So you can't be competitive in South Florida if you're paying what Lake Wales pays, you gotta make that adjustment down. So
So a third of the current employees are being capped even after this 3% adjustment on.
yeah, in some portion, maybe not fully the 5, but yes, they will be. Yep.
Do we have a salary table for commissioners?
That is
Yeah.
capped.
John,
That is capped by the charter. I
you're
can't fix
capped.
that.
I'm capped right here.
Well,
Okay. Go ahead.
I really don't like situations where an employee who's here for long enough winds up hitting a ceiling and in essence doesn't get a raise. And I have a real issue with that. I don't think it's fair. I mean, how many of us would stay in a job if we weren't going up? Then we become Walmart, which is what happens with their employees. I also want to be in a position that we attract good people. Doesn't have to be the best. We don't have to be the highest. But I certainly, if we go out looking for somebody, I'd like to have people come in and look at the job even. And if you're not getting people to come in, then you're in trouble. And I think we may be in trouble. I think that we should, I know we can't do it for this budget, but certainly for next year, I think we seriously have to look at this because we're doing ourselves a disfavor if we don't get the best. When you only have 2 employees, you need the best out there because they've got to handle everything. If you've got 200 employees, you could have some that are the best and some that are not, and it balances itself out. And we are not in a balancing position at this point. We just don't have that many employees. So we need the ones that we have to be at the top of the list.
We don't want to have what happened to Chief Hartman to happen again. And I think I'm in total agreement with you. And that's the perspective going forward.
So what I could
Okay.
do is moving forward, I can add something to our strategic plan where I can look at some salary table corrections to a certain level, maybe looking to move us towards a 1.5 quartiles or to the second quartile, and what that would look for you And then we can kind of collectively work our way through that.
I think they're talking about two different things. That's one. The other is the concept of working in a government environment versus working in a private industry. And that's what's being wrestled here. I hate to bring it up, but that's really what I'm hearing. In a government environment, it's really what you're expressing. In private industry, that doesn't exist. And what you were saying is precisely it. You wouldn't work in an environment where you couldn't get salary increases year after year after year. This is not that environment. Now, one way to handle it is to take a look at our scales. But when one maxes, they max. That's what municipalities do. And it's unfortunate. But possibly reviewing our salary scales and continuing to review them, we can take care of that problem because we need to be the preferred employer. There is no question about that. And I am a firm believer in it, always have been. We have very good people here. Marshall has done a hell of a job getting and retaining really good people. They're sitting right here. Here they are. This is the key staff. And there are no better people out there than what we have sitting right here. We need to keep them. We need to keep them motivated. So if it's the scales that'll do it, then that's what we have to do. But again, it's a municipal environment. It's not private. It's not corporate world. And if people wanted to work in the corporate world, they wouldn't be here. And there are other benefits of working in a municipal environment that you don't get in a corporate world. So, we can't measure if the same job was in the corporate environment, they would be paid more, but they wouldn't get some of the other benefits that they get working here. And they wouldn't have John. Okay. But yeah, we have to, let's look at it and maybe it's something that can be done this year. Maybe it doesn't have to wait till next year. But I'm glad you brought it up. I think you're right. I totally concur. And there has to be a creative way that we can deal with it.
We could be creative. And the only thing that I've learned here over the last couple weeks when talking about the economic, think prospectively. We can do things so long as we do things forward looking, not rewarding backwards. We have to start. That's another mindset that's a little different. We have to really get our arms
We
around.
just
it.
learned that in the last week.
We got to look this way. We can't say you did such a great, nope. You're because of that, we'll reward you this way. So
Yep.
we're gonna, and that's the plan B. We'll tweak something. So, but yeah.
And I just want to clarify, when you did your salary comparison, are you comparing to corporate salaries or are you comparing to
No.
other municipal?
I only benchmark
salary?
against other
So I think that's another
municipalities.
thing to consider is we are only comparing ourselves to other municipalities. And in your analysis, right?
It's
I mean,
hard to do private, not to cut you off.
no, I wouldn't even want, no, I think your approach is correct.
Mhm.
That you are comparing, to address the mayor's concern that this isn't a corporate situation. We are, in your analysis, I'm just confirming, I guess, that you are only comparing to municipal salaries and that we are in the lowest quartile. Yeah, so I'm in favor of increasing our ranking compared to other municipalities. I think that would be appropriate.
And the imperative for that is not to compare against private enterprise, but the fact is uniquely in all of the United States, we have the state of Florida that's, growing like crazy with a level of cost of living that's increasing like crazy. So that's what we're fighting against as well.
Yeah, the other thing, and then I'll get off of it. When we do compare ourselves to other municipalities, it's difficult because we are a small town. We have a relatively small budget. However, we got lots of issues we deal with. Okay. And we're building a fire department where nobody else is. However, we don't have any schools. We virtually have no businesses except for 1.5 maybe. But we're busier than hell. I mean, there's, a lot of it is making up for things that weren't done over the years. But regardless, we're real busy. But it's hard to find a real comparison. No, we're not Boca, we're not Delray. But anyways, yeah, we've got to do some of that comparison. We just got to be careful.
Yeah, we provide all the same services.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
we do.
a scale issue. That's it.
Yeah.
But we provide everything.
But you know, whether you're running a business or you're running a town, you get a police force. His world's the same as everybody else's world. They just maybe have more police, but he's got to go through the same process. Okay, so you're right. So anyways,
Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say that back in 4 or 5 years ago, sorry, I've been talking a lot lately. We tried to bring this up at the commission level. None of you were up here. And we were very lucky to land Marshall in that environment as our town manager. But I think it's definitely time that we keep this as a priority because we don't want to lose, we don't wish to lose any of our key staff. We're on such a great momentum. We're known to do the right things for our residents. So I concur that we need to keep this going at that level and make it a strategic plan priority and see what we can do now.
yeah, and money is one part of what motivates people to stay here.
Yes, sir.
You know, we understand that, but we can't let that part of it slip.
No.
I'm totally there.
Secondly, I moved in my old seat because I can't see the blackboards. I have really bad eyes, so
Then let's
wanted
keep
to
her
let you
there
know.
from now on. So you
Yeah.
got it.
bad eyes. Okay.
Okay, shall we move on? Covered it all?
Good.
Okay,
And we still
Wait,
need
we have to
approval of the resolution.
Yes, we have to approve the resolution. I move we approve resolution number 2022-018.
Second.
all in favor, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next is the interlocal agreement amended to this agenda. This is obviously the deal with Gulfstream. I'd like to say a few things before we get into it, if I may. First of all, an apology to all that are watching that this never hit an agenda. It obviously should have been an agenda item in the past. Yes, as John mentioned at the last meeting, it was discussed a couple of times, but it was never put on the agenda. Should have been definite oversight. The second thing is the wording on the agenda for last Tuesday and then for today. For this subject, approve and authorize the mayor to execute. That's really not the best wording that could have been used, with all due respect. Should have been something like first review of the contract, because that's in essence what it is. It's the first time that any of the commissioners saw this contract. So again, before we get into more of the details, I've got a couple of comments on the contract itself. I'd like to bring your attention to what is in, I guess, the third page, paragraph B, pretty much right in the center. By the way, I viewed the meeting that I missed from the other day, and there was discussion about charges and Gulfstream paying the same amount as our people here pay. And right here, it does state that fees charged to Gulfstream property shall be the same as those charged to Highland Beach properties. I think that should be stricken, because above it says Highland Beach shall receive 100% of the permit fee, which shall be in accordance with the building department fees charged under the town of the Highland Beach schedule of fees. I think that is sufficient, because Highland Beach residents get a 10% discount. There's no reason for us to be giving a discount to Gulfstream people. The reason that Highland Beach people get a discount is a number of reasons. One, they've been paying against this fee schedule for years. They're getting a discount for a number of reasons. One obviously being a thank you for all the time they've been paying the full fee. A help against the current inflationary spiral that we're in, the problems that they're experiencing, getting materials, et cetera. And obviously, they're paying taxes here, and Gulfstream is not paying taxes here. So I don't see any reason why they should be offered a 10% discount. So I think that should be stricken. Does anybody disagree with me?
Not on that.
Not at all.
Yes, sir.
If I would continue, and Jeff made this point when we had our conversation before, where it says the processing order, all we have to do is that we're dictated by statute on how we process permits. You don't have to say first come, first serve. We have so many days to issue a permit once we receive it by statute. Florida Building Code says you got 45 days. Doesn't matter what order we're required, whenever that permit hits the door, it's 45 days. So the order will be determined by when the date stamp of a complete application and submittal. So I think that would be a cleaner way to say that versus first come, first serve. It seems a little too simplistic when really the Florida Building Code directs how we process.
Thank you. You took care of my second point.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I swear.
that's fine. Okay. The other thing that I'm concerned with is the potential of getting overloaded at any particular time. It's possible that in a particular month, we may get overloaded with requests from Gulfstream. I don't know what the likelihood it is. Maybe it'll never happen, but maybe we need to put something in here that says no more than X number in a given month. It's a question more than, I'm not saying we need to do that. Something I'd like you to think about. It would obviously be a terrible shame if all of a sudden we got flooded with them and, you know, we got backed up because of it. So think about it. That's all. Okay, the other thing was I asked David to prepare something to share with everybody, if you don't mind. That's in here on really what the economics are here, so we can take a look at what the fixed costs are versus the variable costs.
Dave and I worked on that. He gave it to me and I added his slide in where he's going to take over for that slide.
Terrific. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're going to go through that. The other thing is, I'd like the Financial Advisory Board to take a look at this whole enterprise in terms of what their opinion is of our taking this this exercise on, not just from a financial standpoint, from an overall business standpoint. So they're meeting later this month. I know they have to meet for the insurance. So I'd like to add that to their agenda. And then we'll obviously give them all the information they need. And Jeff, if you could make yourself available for that meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The last thing is, and this we've got to be real creative on, is I think we need to build some safeguards in. Some measurements. You put out an excellent monthly report for us. So we know where we stand. We see what the previous month's activities were. We see what the year-to-date data is, permits, issues, requests, everything. It's a great report. But I think some kind of safeguards we need to have so we know if we're slipping at all in terms of servicing the Highland Beach residents. So we need to think creatively about what those safeguards are and what kind of metrics we can be looking at there. So that, you know, God forbid we do slip up, you know, we can either fix it or in 90 days we're out of this. Because obviously that's paramount. We can't be slipping up here in terms of taking care of our residents. I don't think we would, but we got to know if we are. So if we can all think about what kind of safeguards we can build in. Okay. That's all I have. Turn it over to you.
Okay, Commission, Vice Mayor, Mayor. So I'm just going to discuss kind of how this came about and I'll try to go through. There's only 6 slides. It should be relatively
That's
quick.
okay. Take your time.
Okay. So I want to talk about how this was initiated. Gulfstream reached out to Highland Beach to inquire about this. I believe Marshall was at a conference or a meeting and the Gulfstream manager approached him and kind of bumped this around. And at the time, Town Manager Labadie, he got a hold of me and he's like, hey, look into this. Tell me what you think, but only look into it, you know, and only let me know if you think this could benefit us. I mean, and I think that's implied, you know, obviously. And then after gathering data, and I had to get some commitments from CAP. That was going to be the key because the variable is really the key to this whole thing. I was able to get commitments from CAP because right now we get an inspector that's available because maybe we only have 2 or 3 of these type of inspections, but we have 10 of these, and there's different, you know, plumbing inspector, mechanical inspector, structural inspector, electrical, and so on. They come down and they get what they can when they can, and then they leave. And that sometimes gives us some inconsistency. So I said, I need some consistency, and I need to know that you're going to have the personnel available. Because even as someone myself who owned my own third-party inspection agency, just like CAP, staffing levels is you're constantly, it's a variable all the time. So I found out that it was not just feasible, but it was definitely going to be in the best interest of the town of Highland Beach, and I'm going to go over that. So on June 21st, 2022, this was discussed in public at a commission meeting during the manager's report. Then again, that same day, we had 2 different meetings. We had a special meeting, and it was also brought up as part of the budget with finance director. June 29th, this was in the Coastal Star, and it published an article specifically talking about this. Then July 7th, the intercoastal or the interlocal agreement financials were included in a budget presentation to the Financial Advisory Board. So the Financial Advisory Board is already aware that this is going on. July 19th, it was discussed in public at a commission meeting, again, during the manager's report. So if you really look at this, you know, this has been out into the public 5 times. It's been available for the public to reach out and digest and ask questions on. So we have an agreement that took a long time to get through with our attorney and go back and forth. Marshall and I spent time on it. Marshall spent time. I spent time, went back and forth with it's Alex. And we made a bunch of changes in there. Of course, the first one initially came from Gulfstream, and that's the one that we had amended. And in our opinion, it clearly does define the responsibilities of both towns because, you know, I just want to let you know that this does not include planning, zoning, or any code enforcement. This is solely building inspections and plan review. The fees for both towns are based on the Highland Beach fee schedule, so they don't have their own fee schedule. They've agreed to our fee schedule. We get to keep 100% of the fees. And again, as I said earlier, it's just building. It has nothing to do with planning or zoning or anything else like that. And everything comes to an online portal, which I've already been working with SmartGov and getting the parcels uploaded to the system from Gulfstream. Maybe at some point we will look at maybe separating out to 2 separate systems, the same type. But for now, we're just going to absorb them into ours to keep costs down while we try this out for 90 days. And in their agreement, the interlocal, the Gulfstream is responsible for the administrative of all consumer inquiries. So all these complaints and all this things that sometimes tie me up a lot, that's what they're responsible for. Now, they might have to call us to get some information, but they're going to be responsible to their own residents, which is really nice. And that's going to be one of the key components of this.
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah.
I think
so-
that's super critical
Yeah.
to all of this.
So all the calls to Carol that I would normally do as a resident of
So-
Highland Beach are actually the residents of Gulfstream will.
Resident-driven phone calls, Gulfstream is responsible for handling them. Now, the contractors, when they call about questions about permit and plan review, of course, we have to handle. That's part of the permitting process. But when the residents have issues or they have concerns or they want to know about the process, it's in the agreement that Gulfstream is responsible for the administration of all the consumer inquiries. And that is one of the best parts about this, is it's going to cut out a lot of my time, a lot of Marshall's time, because this is going to another, we're really just processing permits for them and doing inspections. And that's, for the most part, that's it. I mean, this doesn't even include, not even floodplain, we don't have to look at. They have their own floodplain administrator. And of course, we have a hold harmless agreement to indemnify Highland Beach against claims, which should be standard. Plus, we're going to be added on their insurance. And here we go. 90 days. Let's test drive this for 90 days. see what we have. If we don't like it, we can say, hey, this isn't going to work. All right, but it'll be a way for us to be a good neighbor. The benefits, improve service to the residents of Highland Beach. And that's really one of the biggest things. Say, well, how is that possible? It's because I have those commitments from CAP government to supply the staffing that we need now on a full-time basis. So now, instead of having someone for 2 or 3 hours a day to just run in, when it's convenient that they can make it down here and do these inspections and then leave and go drive all the way out to Belle Glade like I used to do for CAP. Now this is the priority. Now they're going to be staffed here. So now if you fail an inspection in the morning or you're not ready and you say, hey, we want that inspection, could you come back in the afternoon? And I'm going to go, yes, I'll have him come back in the afternoon. Reason why is because now they're not out in Belle Glade or Pahokee or South Bay, or they're not up in Boynton Beach. They're here. So we're going to have increased staffing levels, and the amount of workload isn't going to equal what we're going to gain from those people being staffed here by CAP. And if we don't need them and things get slow, I only need you 6 hours today. But I'll call Judson, hey, you can use him for 2 hours a day in Boynton if you need. This is the flexibility of the hybrid system. That's why, to me, this, is really more or less of a no-brainer. It's decreased plan review time for the exact same reason as the first one. And I already talked about the, returning for re-inspections on the same day, if possible. And it also has a lot to do with the consistency of the inspectors. Now we're going to have, for the most part, the same guy coming every day, and they're familiar with the job. I don't have Joe Hennessy coming down on Monday and then he's tied up doing something for them in Lake Worth. And now I have another plumbing inspector that I never met before. I try to vet all these guys that are here, and there's a bunch that I got rid of that I don't want here. And okay, so we need people with the right personality to work for our residents. This is going to improve that, because now I'm going to have that consistency that I always wanted. We have it now with the structural inspector, because I did commit, over a year ago or so to a full-time structural inspector and plans examiner. But now we're going to start putting all those other pieces of the puzzle in. So we're going to have more consistency for our residents. And the travel to and from, they're using CAP government vehicles and CAP government gas. It's not even wear and tear on our vehicles. If I have to go up every now and then to spot check or see something, it's really not a big deal. I don't put a whole lot of miles on to begin with, but on a daily basis with, the guys in the trenches doing all this work, it's not even our gas or our vehicles. We have no wear and tear. And this is the big one. We are not hiring any additional employees to do this. So our fixed costs stay the same. Nothing changes, only the variable does. And I think Dave is going to touch on that. And any additional revenue stream will increase the administrative fees recouped by the town that goes to the general fund. And there's more of a breakdown on that, because I don't want to get hung up on that. Because there's no increase in fixed costs, and let's say we have an additional 30% in revenue, or 40, whatever it is, that 30% goes towards our fixed costs in the building department. So our permit fees that we're paying are going to be able to be, well, let me get to the next one here. This is how we can give our discount to our residents. And that could be offset by the fact that we have the Gulfstream paying the regular off the fee schedule, just like we want. You can continue to extend the discount to our residents only. And then the fees that Gulfstream is coming in is helping to offset our fixed costs, and obviously picking up the variable costs. And at the same time, because, we don't work, I don't exist for free for a long time. the building department paid next to nothing. It was like free rent, free electricity, free everything, free access to this building. Well, since we have to be self-sustaining, there are some municipalities where they have, the building department is literally their own building. And you have your own expenses. So we have to be able to recoup those expenses. And that's where we're finally paying back, to the community, paying back to the general fund, some revenue to offset the expenses of running and having that building and maintaining that building, putting a roof on, all of these things. It all comes into play. So after evaluating existing and projected numbers, I will be recommending a permit fee decrease on October 1st, but that could be in the form of the 10% discount to our residents only. And Gulfstream is not privy to the discount because they didn't contribute any of this revenue to our fund balance that's built up. So this is, one of the things that separates this, because, all the money that it costs to build this department, they just can't walk in and have it for free.
That's the overhead.
Right. So that's why, if you make the adjustment to the agreement, eliminate that portion about the same fees they pay from the fee schedule, it's already in there. I think that makes us significantly more workable. And then at this point, I'm going to hand this back over to David. Hopefully he can read that because I can't from this far
I
away.
have a quick question.
And then
for
I'll
you.
come back for questions. But
Oh,
sure.
back
No,
for questions?
I'm coming
We can
back
back
for
for
questions when
questions.
David's done, unless you want to do them now before.
Only because I think this one does not have to do with the finances. Is the town planner at all responsible?
Nope.
No,
So the town planner is not going to be expected to do anything with the Gulfstream
No.
agreement.
We said
Nothing.
that from the very first meeting, even when I talked to Greg at our managers meeting, I said, no planning, no code enforcement. I don't want to do that in that. I'm not even comfortable because I don't want the headaches that come. He said, nope, just building permit review, inspections and C of O issuance per the building code. So no planning, no code enforcement. No,
None of that.
And then, so you building official Remus, your workload, how does your workload change once this agreement is implemented?
Overall, it's really not going to change at all because right now I'm still doing some of the plan review and stuff when I have time and because of with my other administrative duties. So I'm trying my best to keep up with both worlds, but this is going to take some of the pressure off me because now instead of me doing most, if not the majority of the mechanical, electrical and plumbing plan review, we're going to have people here full time. So that'll take some of the stress off me. And it's going to get those permits out quicker. We already get them out quicker than probably just about anyone to begin with, but we're going to get them out even quicker and have a better turnaround time. And then it's just going to be better overall. So it'll kind of balance things out for me.
How does that work? And is that because you have more of CAP to do those
Correct.
reviews?
Because now
Okay.
I'll have more of a commitment from CAP because CAP has to hire people or move people around and then fill all their slots in order. They have to hire people based on their needs. And right now we've only committed to one full-time person for them. I've even put in place, they now have on the administrative end for the permit technician, they actually hired a permit technician that's going to be helping us that we've actually been training. So we're already putting all this in place so that we're covered on all levels. So all of the increases are going to be covered by CAP government. We're just administering it like we are now. To me, it's a win-win. It's going to take a little pressure off me, actually, so that I can do more of my administrative duties and making sure that things are running smoothly versus having to stop and run back and then doing a quick plan review. Or did you get this electrical out? Or, I'm going to have to do all those same things anyway at some point when there are problems. But right now, it's a lot. It's a lot. I have a lot on my plate.
And so you don't anticipate having to hire any Highland Beach building employees?
No.
It's just all the variable CAP.
At 100% variable cap. There's no one that we need to hire. I'm not going to ask to hire one person at all. I mean, unless our numbers here start to get to the point where it's like, hey, it might be better if we have our own person. But we already tested the water. I'm gonna be honest with you. We tested the water with this when I first started. We just I put a advertisement for a job that didn't really exist, just to kind of see what kind of response we would get at a good rate. And we had like 2 people who were unqualified apply. So the problem with this industry, and this is the CAP is bearing the brunt of this, there's a big deficit in this industry with inspectors and plans examiners. It's a big deficit for people that do what I do.
Not surprised.
Yeah. Because we're so popular.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, this is Vice Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor and Mayor, this is really a good deal. I mean, it's mind-boggling, to be honest with you. At what point have you ever heard where your variable costs are only being affected and you can control that? So let's look at it here. So what I did here is so on the top line here, sorry, I got to use my glasses now at that age. At the top line here, this right here is the building department's proposed FY23 without the interlocal agreement. So here, right here, you can see what's the fixed cost: $1,040,227. That's the fixed costs in that department. And at an average permit fee of $770, right? It takes 1,351 permits to cover fixed costs. Now let's look at what the budget is with this interlocal agreement. Same fixed cost, same amount of the number of permits needed to cover the fixed cost. Well, what's changed? Well, what's changed is the highlighted yellow, right? Your variable costs change. Okay. But this interlocal agreement really has a potential to really do great things. So at the end of the day, since most, if not all, the additional work relating to this interlocal agreement will be subcontracted out to CAP government, the only change in our cost structure will be a variable cost. And now the very bottom part, I don't know if you can see that. I don't know why the screen is so much bigger. Just go to the very bottom. Yeah, there you go. Here's the most beautiful thing about this. Now we get to increase the number of our customers, right? So we get to increase the number of our customers to cover those fixed costs. And so instead of only having a population of, and let's just use round figures, 4,000 or so customers that can cover those building permits, we've just expanded that to where we will ensure in the future that this interlocal agreement with Gulfstream will have enough customers to always cover our fixed costs. And now to hear the fact that, we don't even have to deal with the telephone calls or coming in, it's really a phenomenal deal. And I know just from a finance perspective, I know the building department's in agreement, and the finance department, I would tell you, this would be an excellent decision. Yes.
So with CAP, what type of agreement is there any like long-term commitment when we ask for an additional however many hours? Do you have to commit for them for 6 months, for 12 months? Like how quickly can you? Yeah, how long is the contract term, I guess is what I'm asking. Yes.
Going to the more specific part of your question, we have no commitments. If I call them the next day and I say, I don't want anybody here, that's it. We're not paying, there's no penalty.
Okay.
Because of my relationship with CAP, I was able to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Could you handle this? Could you commit to the personnel to me? And they'll do it. And it's their risk. this is the risk that CAP is taking, because then if they hire they're always hiring people. They're in a constant state of hiring people because they're constantly growing. If I say, hey, I want to commit to these people, and if we don't use them, what's going to happen is he's going to put them somewhere else. And that's it. So that's why they're taking the risk, because really to them, it's minimal risk because they're constantly growing. I mean, they're doing stuff up in Panama City now, crying out loud. They're on the West Coast, the East Coast, all over South Florida. So we don't have any specific commitment. Our contract is an hourly contract. We just pay an hourly rate based on plan review. If you're covering as building official, if you're doing plan review, if you're doing inspections, it's another rate. If you're doing permit technician work, it's another rate. That's it. We just pay an hourly rate. So whatever they bill us. So and it even happens now with Mike, who does a lot of our full time. There's times when they'll say, hey, could you run to Boynton and do these inspections? And he'll do it. And I just save 2 hours of payroll. I mean, 2 hours of billing time. So it's just very convenient having cap government right now because of the flexibility without us having to commit to say, oh, I want to, so we don't have the situation where I say, hey, I need a full-time person. And then 3 months later, I says, I don't need them anymore. It's not like I have to continue to pay them. It's over next day.
So do you see any, I mean, I've heard a lot of positive things. I mean, are there any negative?
But we're going to have hiccups with the software system. We're going to have hiccups. We're going to have problems with people who are going to fill out the wrong permit application. We're going to have all, different things. But even they're going to be registering the contractors that we normally, we're not even registering contractors. They're registering the contract.
So that whole process in the beginning, when a contractor has to register, we don't even, that's not us.
Yeah, they're
That's
doing it. I mean,
Gulfstream
we're
is
not even
that.
doing that for them. I mean, because they're putting in our system. But I trained someone from their finance department and another one of their employees. They came down and we showed them how to input the contract. I mean, we're even taking that part of the equation out of the administrative component, which it's like it's a bonus. But we are going to have some hiccups if we decide to separate out, their own, to give them their own site for for software, so that it maybe in the future just doesn't work, and we can say, here, take your ball and move it. You can have it. There'll be a little bit of time and effort, but we're going to have hiccups along the way but this is normal. We had hiccups along the way when we went from 100% paper to 100% paperless.
Mm-hmm.
We had a bunch of hiccups. We're used to it. We'll adapt.
And Gulfstream is about half the size, right? I put their property value based, we're at $3.097 billion. They're at 1.4. We had $30.5 million of new work, right? For this tax year. They had about 15.3. And so again, I think that when Jeff says a full-time, he means a full-time subcontracted person. Think about it. If you're on CAP's end of the deal, you want to have one of your employees in this area, right? Windshield time to a business is horrible, right? It's not billable. But man, you get it. If you can plant an employee here, their employee in a relative area, and then the benefit of just dealing with Jeff all the time, it's a win-win.
I have another question. Okay, so Gulfstream has more single families compared to condos. Highland Beach has more condos. Any comment about that mixture of type of structure and how that impacts?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, Jack could probably attest. I had Jack over at my office, I think on Tuesday, and I showed him, I said, we have one book that's about 4 inches thick that covers a single family home from top to bottom. Simple. I love the fact that they're mostly single families because they're easier to service. They're easier to inspect. The other 3 feet of books in my office it's all condo stuff. That's commercial buildings, condominiums, mid-rises, high-rises. They're much more complicated. There's more involved where you have to get architects and engineers involved, where there are a lot of things in single families where you don't need an architect or engineer. People may elect to hire one to do some of the work, but they're just easier. And many of the owners or some of the inspectors that CAP has are actually certified for, because Florida has what's called a single family inspector. So you can have one inspector that can do the mechanical, electrical and plumbing for a single family home. Not allowed to do it on a condo, but you're allowed to do that on a single family home. So it's even more efficient as far as that's concerned.
Oh,
No.
Can't talk without.
Gotta come up here.
Yes, you pointed out the number of books, one book for residents and a number of books or different books depending on the type of condo and what's going on. But there are other major differences between the two that I think could wind up in a lot more work and a lot more effort. We're dealing with mansions that make our little houses here small, and you're dealing with all kinds of different issues that will take more time. So on a permit for permit basis, it's going to cost a lot more up there. And I have a lot of other things to say because I haven't heard you guys say one thing whatsoever beyond the money, making the money. Is that all this commission cares about?
Okay, thanks, Jack. I think you walked out when he was talking about the benefits.
I spent
So-
45 minutes with him. I've gone through all this whole thing. That
Okay.
He went through all
Thank
that
you,
with
Jack.
me, but it has nothing to do with the change that you made to the charter that talked about not selling services.
Thank you, Jack.
And this is not in the
Okay.
spirit of that.
The other piece that is critical, we shouldn't walk away from it. If you can take a business from a fixed cost of 71 cents on every dollar to only 59 cents on every dollar, you're a fool not to do it
Absolutely.
because you've just taken your risk way, way, way down.
You've spread your risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
God forbid this recession hits the permitting in our town. If all of a sudden, we're in a recession, people say, well, I'm not going to be up doing all the updating that I've been doing. We can afford not to lay people off when you got 59 cents of every dollar tied up in fixed costs. When you got 71 cents tied up in it, you got a whole different discussion.
I have a question, Jeff. Are there times, because I haven't done any renovation. I didn't know the places, but down here I did, that people actually have to wait an extended period of time before an inspector can go and look at the work that's been done so that they can then continue?
So when they're ready for an inspection, and many people, if I was able to show you in my office, people schedule inspections way in advance. As long as you call or go online and schedule it by 3:30 PM on a Monday, you will have an inspection on a Tuesday. So it's just up to the contractor when they're to a certain point where they're ready for an inspection, they will call or preferably schedule online that inspection, and we will be there the very next day.
So we're able to do that now.
We've been doing that. Yeah, it's always been that way. Yeah,
Yes.
there's no change in that whatsoever.
Okay, any questions? Go
I
ahead.
do.
Shoot.
Got a few.
Go ahead.
First of all, in the original agreement, I had a couple problems. One is I felt like we weren't identifying and detailing well enough the responsibilities of both Gulfstream and us. It seems it's straightforward and simple. Gulfstream has to handle all of the resident issues of getting to a point where a permit is needed, and then they send that electronically to you, and so all you do is, handle the permit and the inspections, and then issue a certificate of occupancy, correct?
Correct. Well, we give them the certificates of occupancy, and then they're the ones, then they hand them out. We just literally give them to them and they do the rest of the work.
So we're really kind of, what's the word, protected from all of that interaction with the Gulfstream residents and permit requesters. Now, the other part of this is that looking back at the contract we had with Delray, 10-year contract, the commission here didn't want to deal with it. They always kicked the can down the road, even though they, I think, believed that the costs were too high. It was ridiculous. They'd rather have the next commission deal with it. So Delray developed kind of a, an unfortunate attitude, I guess I'll put it like that, towards us. Now, I don't want to have that happen with Gulfstream, but they have an attitude, potential for an attitude problem with us if they see that our residents are getting a 10% reduction in the fees.
Well,
You think-
they're going to have to approve it. Once we get it to the condition and shape or form that the
Well,
commission.
just
so
like we
chooses.
approved that fire contract, that doesn't mean it goes away. I mean, do you sense that that would be a problem, is my question?
I honestly don't believe it'll be a problem because of the complaints that they had about the process that they are going through with
With
the
Delray.
Delray's building. So I think that this will be such a breath of fresh air to them. And they're paying the fee schedule that they've already been able to look at and agree to. So I don't foresee this being an issue. Again, if we extend that 10% or whatever percentage discount to our residents, that's for our residents. That's for us to do because we built this department with the permit holders around here. Probably initially it was built with ad valorem taxes, at the very beginning. And so they're stepping into this. So I don't think they are going to have an issue because as long as the service is there, the permit fees, when you're right where you should be anyway, are never going to be an issue.
So the other thing, and I did have some concerns about the charter, because the intent was making sure that what we're doing with fire EMS, with water, sewer, and with the other one, and police, that we not contract that out or get rid of it, sell it off as integral utility services for this town. That we want to make sure that that would not happen and leave the town in the lurch. However, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I mean, we're talking about
This is,
maximum 90-day kind of, let's see what happens contract. And if it works, great, we continue. If it doesn't, we cancel,
That's it.
correct?
Absolutely. We have,
All right.
there's no hardcore commitment to any particular number of years. It's literally a month to month with a 90-day out for
So we're
both
not
sides.
contracting out the building department. That's the point. We're not getting rid of it or anything like that. If anything, what I'm hearing, and again, I'm just asking you to validate this, that we can make $300,000. Not exactly a trivial amount. We've already heard recently some bad news on healthcare, right? Humana, that's 100 grand. And we got another 100 grand, on maybe 150,000 on other issues, maybe 300,000 or 400,000. Well, this immediately gives us some breathing room, so we're not choking. At the very least, if we can not only go on to reduce our budget, put more money into our reserves, or ensure that we don't have to raise future millage rates. So what else do I see about this? Prevents future increases, maybe, in the millage. Increases the revenue with less pressure for us, right? Because, David's going to have a tough time living up to all of his comments and forecasts and contingencies and concerns. But if he hits all of that and does really well, maybe we can make a statue and put him out in the fountain. But the fact is, it's not going to be easy. Now, the Highland Beach residents are going to be paying less. So that issue kind of goes away. The level of service, LOS, is what I refer to in our private world, who you're saying would improve. If anything, our responsiveness, our time to resolve permits, to provide the inspections, to ensure that we don't end up with the town holding up resident construction projects, that if anything, that's going to improve. That's the intent here, as well as use it as an opportunity to earn revenue, which is, yes, one aspect, but not the only aspect. Am I wrong?
No, it's a positive because we're going to have consistency and, really the money side of it, I'm not going to say I don't care about because obviously I have to do budgets every year and everything, but I want to improve the level of service to the community. And that's what this enables me to do by just bumping us up to the next level where I could make commitments where now it's hard to make those commitments with the volume that we have. Okay. I can't bring on a mechanical plumbing inspector on a full-time basis if I only have 4 hours of work for him a day or 5 hours.
All right. So continuing on, I've got several points. The other is the nature of the work to be done between mansions and condos. I mean, from my own personal experience being deeply involved in a couple major condos in Highland Beach, there's no comparison. I mean, it just, even the pipes from the toilets on one building, you can have 24 of them. Each one of them have to be done. You're looking at an increased number of permits for that one building beyond just, I'm redoing the kitchen or I'm replacing the toilets or whatever. It's so much more involved. So I don't personally agree with the notion that, it's going to be more difficult with mansions, which are basically no more than 3 stories instead of 10 to 20 stories. The last thing is, we're not looking at this as as having a negative impact on your time and your ability to respond, although it is going to require some of your time. What you're saying is you can accommodate it within your current level of effort.
Yeah, especially once I have people here full-time doing plan review, that takes some of that time off me, so I can now put my efforts, in more on my administrative duties versus having to stop what I'm doing to run to get a permit out so that,
Okay, well, this is now, as the mayor has already indicated, is going to have a review by the Financial Advisory Board, I assume. And that, in which case, we also have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're doing what's best for the town. And to ignore this opportunity, I think in the face of what we're experiencing in terms of financial pressure anyway, with the economy the way it is, with our capability that we could improve our level of service, I'm not sure how we would want to ignore this. I can't see that. So I'd rather wait to see further input on the finances, as long as the wording on the contract does change here. And again, as long as the time frame doesn't change and the intent is for 90 days and let's roll and see what happens. That's not a 10-year contract that choked us, whether we liked it or not.
nope, not at all. And going back to your point about the difference between residential and commercial buildings, whether it's all relevant to the permit fee anyway. So if you're going to do, like we've had in Highland Beach, a $1.7 million in renovations to a single family home, it takes a long time. The permit fee is up high enough to cover the costs. And again, all those variables are covered by cap. And all we're doing basically is being the administrator and providing the framework for them to operate in. That's really all we're doing. And so I'm just asking the commission for your trust in my judgment, to lead this and move forward with this when the time is appropriate, once you go through the Financial Advisory Board.
Well, I consider this a first read, as the mayor has indicated. And as we will go forward, we'll look forward to a second read.
Before you jump in, I just want to follow up with you. Do you want to see, like something laid out in the contract that just details 1, 2, 3, 4 responsibilities?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking for?
Yes, on both Gulfstream and on Highland Beach.
Okay.
What are the responsibilities? No matter how short they may be, I want to know and define it as best you can. I want clarity so that people will understand what it
Okay.
is that we
I
are.
wanted to make sure before we say, I see you're making a note then, Jeff.
I'm taking notes.
Okay. All yours.
Okay, I agree that there really is very little difference in the initial permitting process. You're looking at plans one way or another. So it doesn't matter if you're looking at plans for a 2-room condo or you're looking at plans for a bigger structure. Most of the differences come in when you involve bathrooms and kitchens and things of that nature. Once they show you how the construction is going to be, that's how it's going to be. And as long as they're following code, it really doesn't take that much longer. And I think also in a condo, like my building has almost 240 units. If you've got 10 people doing renovations at a time, which is very likely. That's the same as having like 24 homes, you know, it more than equals one house. I think that, I mean, I'm going to sidestep a little bit for just a minute. To me, there is something to being a good neighbor. And I don't mean being a good neighbor to your detriment. And this isn't even being a good neighbor where it's symbiotic, where they're, you know, it's flat. We are benefiting. Our citizens are benefiting. So I truly don't understand what the issue is. And as you said, it's 90 days out. We lose almost nothing. Actually, we lose nothing if we try it.
No risk.
If it doesn't work, then we say we tried and we're sorry it's not working. But if we can lower, you know, cover our fixed costs at a smaller amount, I don't understand how you can not want to do that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, I agree with you that there's very little difference dealing with a house and dealing with a condo. And actually condos are more difficult because you got pipes going in all kinds of different directions and people have done renovations before that. And I also really like the idea that there will be consistency of inspectors, because you hear people say, well, but mine went through, and they'll say, well, how come mine didn't? We did the same thing.
Yeah.
And this way that won't happen. You know, when we put hurricane impact windows in, some of the inspections were great and the windows were sealed properly and installed properly, and others were not so great, where they weren't the windows were okay, but the installation wasn't. So they leaked. And I don't want to see that. I want to see it where everyone gets the same look, where the inspections are the same regardless of where you are. So I think it's a good idea. It's a nice idea. I don't want to be a bad neighbor. It benefits us. And I also don't feel it's necessary to overcharge. We have complained for years about Delray overcharging us. And I don't want to do that where it's not necessary. We're still making a profit on this. We're still being ahead of the game.
Well said.
Anything on the contract itself?
No, because you all have talked about it and we're getting a revision anyway, so no.
We tore it apart pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, you handled it just fine. I don't have to go there.
Okay. Peggy?
Thanks, Mayor. First, I'd like that charter review opinion from Glenn or whomever, top priority. Secondly, I agree with sending this back to over to FAB. I'd like to speak about the culture of Gulfstream for just a minute, because I've looked at homes there. I looked at the school for my children. We have a lot of friends there, spent time there. Gulfstream is interesting. It's about a quarter of our population, I believe. Some of the lots are much larger. It was founded as a horse and golfing community for the Northeast families who spent winters here only. That's why they built a school. They have a general greater protection of their sort of feel and aura of their town. They don't tend to knock down. There's a certain, unless Jeff wants to correct me, I haven't been there this week, but there's a certain feel for maintaining their dignity and decorum of their home sites. They're just not knocking down and putting up 8,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot as readily as some other barrier islands. And for that reason, I think that they'll be slower to just bombard us with permit requests. My question for Jeff would be, what is the worst case scenario on a given day or week for us? If we were to do this, if you could maybe outline, not talking about a hurricane or a major natural catastrophe, but what would be the worst case department scenario for you?
The worst case department scenario would be like trying to change to another vendor other than CAP for, and being in the middle of that and then trying to retrain people all over again. As far as the volume with what you alluded to, you are correct, because everything's built, the infrastructure is built for this in there. We can't process any permits on the front end until they already approve them on their end, not just with planning and zoning, but literally they have rules and regulations for a roof permit. So we don't touch it until they sign off on it and say, yes, this has the right color. This is the right kind of tile. They are very meticulous about everything, and that's all on them. So we can only we can't work any faster than they do because they are the ones who are going to be pushing this to us. And they only have one person working. So it's going to more or less trickle in, plus the volume is significantly less.
And I believe I've looked at their codes over the years, as I have other towns, when we were going through this building department upkeep and renovation of the building department and the codes. I believe if you could maybe speak to that, Jeff, their codes are much more restrictive than ours. I believe they have paint color requirements. They have outward appearance requirements and historical preservation requirements, which again does not allow them to just raise the lots, trees and all, and build. So if you could maybe speak to that, they're very conservative in their codes and enforcement.
You are correct, which is why they have to approve all permits before we even process them. I mean, we can start doing some of the back end work with the permit application, make sure that, everything's in place, but there's a spot in the workflow where it will not move forward until they sign off on it. And they have to look at all of that because they are very meticulous. They have their own rules and regulations that were actually quite surprising. It's kind of like it's more like an HOA.
Yes, yeah. I think even mailbox and garage door paint colors have to be uniform. And driveway, everything, shrubbery.
Replacement windows, even putting in hurricane windows has to go through them.
Again, they're trying to maintain that sort of old lifestyle. So I just wanted to throw that in for our viewers who may not know. And therefore, I don't think our workload is going to be astronomical, but that's my opinion. You are the expert there. That's it for me. Yes, John?
I was just going to say, you brought up this point about a worst case scenario. Excellent point. Whatever that might be, 90 days.
I get it. I get it. I wish we had 90 days in the 2016 fire department contract, but here we are anyway, moving ahead. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I have a point to make on the charter change. This is the exact opposite of what that change was. That change was so that without voter approval, we could not farm out to Delray and have them take over our fire department. We're not farming out our department, we're bringing things in. So I don't believe it covers. I think it's truly the exact opposite.
So did you guys compare the average permit fees for Gulfstream and us? Because I think you said was $770 based on our fees.
That was our.
So I just wonder, are their averages much higher? Because I guess talking about that single family mansion versus condo, have you looked at their average permit fees? I'm guessing there might be more than $770.
Well, it's not going to be relevant because it's going to be based on hours.
Right.
And Delray has a whole bunch of fees. They have a very complicated permit fee schedule where they charge so much for the first, couple thousand and more for this. And then there's plan review fees and all these other fees that have kicked in. But I do know that just based off of the Delray Beach fee schedule, that what they were paying, that the average revenue generated to Delray Beach by the permit holders of Gulfstream was somewhere around $450,000 a year.
450, so less than our average. Interesting. Okay, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, I had guessed 500 just when I was just thinking about it.
Okay,
That's all. You know, I'm not surprised at the 450.
okay. And I guess I'll just point out in discussions that I've been involved with the FAB, we had looked at other creative ways to bring in revenue for the town. So, I mean, I don't know what the FAB is going to think about, I can't speak for them, but I know that is something that has been discussed in the past, when we've talked about budgets and shortfalls and all that. What were some creative ways to increase revenue? And I think this is something that kind of meets that. So is there any way, shape, or form that our town manager would ultimately have to assist the building department employees in making decisions that affect Gulfstream residents? Would that ever happen? And just a yes or no?
Well, I
answer.
can't make decisions for Jeff under statute, so I can't, tell him how to do something or force you to sign off on a dilapidated building or with this or that. But there could be, I'm trying to think in a situation where you have really be very unique and rare, since they're agreeing to cover all of the problems, if you will. If there was just some really odd situation, like Jeff went there and, brandished a weapon and assaulted somebody, I think I would have to be involved in that point. I'm sure Chief Allen would probably be involved at that point too. Chief's counterpart over in Gulfstream. No, I mean, I can't say that there couldn't be something. I just don't foresee what it is. If the customer service side is all handled by Greg and his team over there at Gulfstream, I don't know.
Okay. And if there's a resident of Gulfstream that challenges a building department decision, and let's say it's litigation is involved, what does the contract say about legal fees? Would we be responsible for legal fees?
That's the whole harmless sentence.
Yeah, they hold us
Okay,
harmless and they indemnify us at all because excuse me, Jeff, under the contract cannot issue a permit or a C of O until the community signs off on it. So they're assuming that responsibility that everything that they wanted. Now, if somebody decides to not install something or build according to the building code, we would have our ability to say, well, you don't get your inspection. It stops until you do those things. But those are pretty spelled out in the building code itself. And it's part of the building permit fee to capture that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Couple things. One, our role here is to set policy and not to get into the nitty gritty of, well, how are you going to handle this and how are you going to handle that? I have complete confidence in you, Jeff. Got complete confidence in David. Obviously, complete confidence in Marshall. The three of them are recommending that we do this. That's enough for me in terms of ability to handle it. I think from a policy standpoint, we are looking at taking an extremely well-run department and offering that knowledge and that expertise to a neighbor. We're sure that it's not going to hurt our ability to service our current residents. In fact, the professional manager is telling us it's going to enhance his ability to service. I have confidence in him. He wouldn't say that if he didn't believe it. The insurance is 90 days, doesn't work her out. We happen to be able to gain some additional bottom line from it, which is a nicety, but it's not the key reason to do it. I think from a policy standpoint, it's the right way to utilize our resources. We've talked about putting in some controls so we can make some calls and measure to make sure that it's not hurting our residents in any way. I don't see a reason not to do this. And I know I'm being redundant, but our three top guys are telling us they can handle it. I got confidence. Let's get the contract done properly, but let's make sure that the Financial Advisory Board looks it over And they're in agreement that this is an enterprise we ought to go after. I don't see any other reason not to do it. Couple of little comments off on the side. Yeah, they have some very major mansions in that town. We also have very major mansions in this town. I've spent a lot of time riding my bike around that town. And I have to tell you, the first and the second time that I was riding through the neighborhoods, I would stop to take a drink, or I would stop to, look at some houses or something. Police car would pull up. So they watch their town pretty carefully, just like we watch our town pretty carefully. Okay. And they have lovely homes, just as you were saying. I didn't realize that they had color control on the houses, but they're lovely. There is much more green space in that town than ours. But I don't know that they have more mansions than we do, because they're set way back. You can't tell if there's one back there or three back there. Okay. But I don't know that it's that dissimilar to what Jeff and his people are dealing with every day. But I, for one, have confidence in our people. I think from a policy standpoint, that's what we're here for. Let's support them. Okay.
Mayor, to add,
Yeah.
their town manager is a very highly regarded man, Greg, and their council's been lovely. I don't foresee any troubles with that personnel staffing in terms of working
Absolutely.
with us. They're
Yep.
good neighbors.
And he's not going to sacrifice the $94,000 cut that we have in the budget either. So, okay, let's move on unless there's any more conversation.
So if I could,
1 second.
just marching orders. We're going to take it to make the requested contractual changes. I'll make those, get those over to Gulfstream so they can look at it. I'll take it.
No, I'd like you to make the changes and let us take a look at them,
Okay. First,
Okay.
okay.
please.
And then 8/23 is the next FAB. So we'll get it scheduled to the Financial Advisory Board to review, and then can kick it back to you all.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Jack, if you'd like to say something, please.
Do we need a vote or anything on this?
I don't think so,
Get back to work.
because we're sending it back for
Okay.
another read.
Want to make sure.
Well, let's just make sure. Do we need any motion here?
No, it's just a recommendation to send to FAB.
So does that require a motion?
It's a consensus.
Okay,
It's a consensus.
okay. Jack wanted to make a comment. Don't go away, Jeff. You may. Go ahead, Jeff.
I might comment, Marshall, David, and Jeff are employees of our town. They're doing a great job, but they are employees. And as you just said about 3 or 4 times, it's this commission's role, who are elected by the residents of this town, to set policy. And what I've tried to talk to you about is the policy that you set when you changed the charter. Let me reread this, Evelyn, because you didn't get the correct words before. Shall the town of Highland Beach amend its charter to adopt section 2.01 to provide that the town may not transfer, control, abolish, merge with, or sell. I'm saying it loud so everybody hears. Or sell the services of fire, police, or water unless improved by a referendum of this town. If you feel so strongly about this, why don't you put this out for a referendum in the town?
We're not going to enter into a discussion. You can make your comments.
It's, by the way, this is 0.02% of the budget. And we have to go through this for 0.02% of the budget.
Anything else you want, Jeff? All set. Thank you, gentlemen. I think next is to go through the upcoming meetings. August 25th is the Town Commission special meeting. Let's back up. What is it, the 24th or 23rd, you said?
23rd is the FAB, correct? Linelda?
Correct. That's correct.
Correct. The
And that-
23rd of August,
For the two
Financial
subjects.
Advisory Board will have healthcare. They'll have the interlocal, and then David's quarterly report that he gives them on activities.
Okay. And then September 6th, Town Commission special first public hearing budget. Then the 21st, that's at 5:01, by the way. And then on the 21st at 5:01 again, Town Commission special. Can't be the first public hearing. It's got to be the second public hearing meeting. Okay, we're on to comments.
Wait a minute, so.
That was,
What-
it was written twice as first, but the first one was on the 6th. So the 21st has to be the second
But
one.
we also have a meeting on the 20th.
Those are just. Since this is a special
are just-
budget meeting, you're
these
just
are the
seeing
budget
budget
meetings.
meetings.
Okay, I just want to make sure though, for
Yeah.
meetings that we have.
You're right. Usually we go through all the meetings,
Yeah,
but this is a special.
just the
meeting that
budget,
we're
I
having.
understand.
Yeah. But we added a couple of subjects to this meeting.
I think I remember those.
Okay, do you have any other comments? It's,
No, I
it's
don't.
all yours. You don't.
Thank
Okay,
goodness.
no. Peggy, any comments?
I just want to remind the commission, if I could, and our staff that perhaps we could have avoided some of these unforeseen comments or public discussion. If we do put our key items officially on the agenda, because when we get to, as a matter of protocol and in keeping with Robert's rules, because when we get to reports by the commission, the staff at the end of the meetings, that should just be information dissemination and should not incur further discussions at that point. So in the future, if we could, even if it's a last minute agenda item live at the meeting or on the Friday or Monday in advance through the town clerk, if we could just be sure to get them on the agenda. It's just an asset for us and the public. Other than that, I thank my fellow commissioners for their help.
Natasha? anything?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I've got one quick thing. It's about recertification and it's very good news. We have in our building in Dalton Place, 2 double apartments. One of them just finished a complete redo, total gut. And it's on the penthouse. And this apartment was paying $3,800 for their homeowner's insurance. They sent in a copy of the recertification certificate that we have. Their new homeowner's policy is $1,400. Excuse me, $1,800. Went from $3,400 down to $1,800. Just because we've been recertified. You're looking like, So it's a really good idea to get your buildings recertified.
That's excellent.
This realtor.
That's excellent news.
Obviously, everybody in my building is now running after their insurance people. It's unbelievable.
Give those numbers again. I'm writing them down.
Went from 3,400 down to 1,800.
That's amazing.
Now, I said, why are you paying so much? To begin with, because the building, and if you don't know, in condos, the association covers all the insurance of the building, the grounds, et cetera. So all you're insuring is the interior of your unit, your furniture, et cetera. And unless you have very valuable paintings or rugs or whatever, how much are you really going to insure it for? But this guy, that's why I started with, it's a big double unit. But yeah, what's that, about a 40% reduction or something, 45%? So big difference. So get recertified. You might want to share that with some people that are saying, I don't want this. Yep. Okay. That's all I have. This doesn't call for anybody else, but do you have anything, Marshall?
Nope, I've got my marching orders.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll adjourn at 2:53.